Welcome to the Foul Play YouTube channel, Reading with the Crew, episode 64. We're at part 11 of New Witnesses Emerge.
Thank you so much there, Jack61. A warm welcome to you and everyone on the panel, and a warm welcome to everyone who's watching, no matter what platform you're viewing on either YouTube, X, or on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to be here. My name is Dr. Silkman, and I'm from the Foul Play team. I do apologise for a 1 hour later start than per usual. In Australia, or some of the states in Australia, we've changed our clocks. So it was very, very early in the morning for me, but welcome. It's great to be here. So guys, what we're going to do, we're not going to waste any time. We're going to continue our series, our Reading with the Crew series. But first of all, I'd like to quickly introduce our esteemed panel. Today joining us, we have Jack61, we have Susan, we have Katie, and we have I Don't Recall. And it's fantastic that they're here. And again, guys, during the podcast, if you have any questions, please put a Q in front and we'll try and star your questions. And at the end of the podcast, we'll try and answer the questions to the best of our ability. So Jack61, so we don't waste any time, can we have the very first slide, please? Thank you so much. Well, as you know, guys, Neville and I, a couple of months ago, we put together a new series entitled Reading with the Crew, where we're reading passages from John Ferak's book, The Wrecking Crew. We do believe that this is an excellent book, especially if you're new to the case or just want to brush up on the case. What we've done as a team, we've only looked at the new material that was presented in this book. And the chapter that we've been focusing on is entitled New Witnesses Emerge. And as you know, we will be discussing, and we have discussed, the affidavits of Tom Sawinski and Tom Baresh and what they actually mean. So guys, today what we're going to do is continue our series. And we're going to ask the following questions. Now, guys, we read all your questions, all your suggestions, and all your responses. And so if there's an interesting point, we diverge a little bit and we do a bit of research and analysis into those particular areas that you guys find interesting. So today, guys, what we're going to be focusing on are the following. These are controversial topics, right? First of all, we're going to look at, was the Toyota RAV4, was that meant to have been crushed by Stephen Avery, or was it actually meant to be found, right? It's a very, very interesting point. Secondly, and this is an area that a lot of people don't discuss, but I do find it to be very, very important, and that is, why were the license plates removed from the Toyota RAV4? As you know, the license plates were removed, they weren't with the RAV4, and they were placed elsewhere on the Avery salvage yard. What possible reason would someone remove those plates? So we'll be discussing those. And then we're going to deep dive back into the book, where we're going to ask the question that why did Judge Angela Sukowitz believe that it was actually a very good idea to use the confessions of Brendan Dassey as arguments against Kathleen Zellner? And let me tell you, this is very, very controversial. Right, guys? And so we'll be discussing that. And then finally, if we have time, we're going to talk about what Tom Baresh saw. And Tom Baresh, he believes that he saw Bobby Dassey driving the RAV4 very close to the Avery salvage yard in the early hours of the morning. And I noticed I could have the wrong Tom Baresh, but Tom Baresh recently joined Foul Play. I'm not sure whether it's the same Tom Baresh. If it is or if it isn't, welcome. Great to see you here. All right, so guys, please, if you like what we do, subscribe to our channel. And if you like our podcast, give us a thumbs up and share our podcast. And guys, everyone here on the panel wants to thank all of our subscribers, our supporters who are very, very passionate, and all our mods and super mods that do a fantastic job and keep the program running. Thank you so much, guys. All right, Jack61, if we can have the next slide, please. As per usual, this is just a copyright disclaimer. We're going to be making comments and providing material, our opinions. And on the right-hand side, guys, you can see what the Foul Play team stands for. The only thing that we do ask is, please, guys, be civil and respectful in your comments. Thank you very much. Jack61, if we can have the next slide, please. All of you guys know what we're here for. We're here to find justice and to find the truth of what happened to Teresa Halbach that horrible day. On the right-hand side, guys, is just a warning. Some of the material that we're covering is very, very potentially trigger in its nature. So please, viewer discretion is strongly advised, okay? If you feel that you can't handle this material, it's best not to watch the podcast. So guys, you have been warned. All right, so Jack61, if we can have the very first slide. Unless there are any comments. Guys, are there any comments before we start the podcast?
Just one. We've got, just to mention, as always, please, if you have a question, put a Q in front of it so we can get it tagged and maybe answered immediately or at the end of the show if there's time. But no, we don't really have just people saying hi and so forth. Excellent.
And Susan, did you have a quick comment?
My comment is I don't have any comments right now, Doug.
That's good. Thank you so much, Susan. All right, so guys, we'll make a start on the podcast. So at the end of the day, this is the reason why we're here for. Both Tom Sawinski and Tom Baresh have provided affidavits to Kathleen Zellner, which were part of her latest filings. So we'll start off with Tom Sawinski. The question we need to ask is, why is Tom Sawinski's affidavit potentially very, very damaging to what the state's narrative was in regards to what Stephen Avery was going to do to the RAV4, right? So this potentially changes the entire dynamics of the state's case. Very, very interesting. So as you know, Tom Sawinski, he had encountered two males and he saw that they were pushing a dark blue Toyota RAV4 in the very early hours of November the 5th, 2005. Many hours later, Pam and Nicole Sturm found the Toyota RAV4 on the Avery salvage yard. What is very, very damning is that Tom Sawinski believed that he was able to identify one of the males, and that person was Bobby Dassey. Now, these are the observations of Tom Sawinski. This is also very, very damaging because Bobby Dassey, as you're fully aware, he was the state star witness that testified against his own uncle. Now, there was another older male. He did not know. No one knows the identity of that older male, but there were two individuals pushing the Toyota RAV4. We do not know whether Tom Sawinski had identified Bobby Dassey because, as you know, eyewitness testimony can be very, very shaky, but that's what he wrote down in his affidavit. So the important thing that he observed was that these two males were pushing the RAV4. There were no lights on the RAV4. They had to have possessed the key because you need to put the key in the ignition, I believe, to engage the steering. So that's very, very important. The key would have been with these two individuals that were pushing the RAV4. What is without dispute is that Tom Sawinski had phoned the MTSO on November the 6th, 2005. So it wasn't weeks or months later. It was the very next day. His voice was ratified and confirmed by his ex-girlfriend, and his ex-girlfriend even said that Thomas spoke to her about the events that he saw. So this is potentially a very, very serious observation and affidavit by Tom Sawinski. And as you know, Tom Baresh. He saw Bobby Dassey and another individual driving the RAV4 very close to the Avery salvage yard, I believe on County Highway Q. So these observations by Baresh and Sawinski, they're to be treated very, very seriously. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide, and as you can see, Tom Sawinski actually put down using an X where he encountered these two males pushing the RAV4 up Avery Road. Now, one of the central tenets of Mr. Kratz's case against Stephen Avery was what Stephen had intended to do to the RAV4, right? And the investigators and a lot of other people were pushing this narrative. Well, what we'll do, we'll read this, but as you can see, if Sawinski and Baresh are correct, this now makes the state's narrative on extremely shaky grounds. Susan, do you see the slide?
Yes, Doc.
Now, this is what Kratz said in his opening statement in regards to what Stephen was going to do to Teresa's RAV4. Let's go for it. Thank you.
All right. Do I do the Kratz voice or no?
It's up to you if you want to creep people out, but let's go for it.
Now, the evidence is also going to show you where on the property Teresa Halbach's vehicle was found. It was found then, not accidentally, the furthest point from the defendant's trailer. Again, you're going to find that it was intentionally obscured, that it had immediate access to something called a car crusher on the property. You're going to learn why it's important that Teresa's vehicle is next to the car crusher. And you're going to learn the number of crushed vehicles and how easily Teresa Halbach's vehicle could never have been found in this case. Could have been slipped in between, if you will, one of those other cars.
Okay, so I think it's pretty obvious. The main tenet of Kratz's argument is that the reason why, according to Kratz, the reason why Stephen and of course Brendan Dassey had placed the RAV4 there, they hid it so no one could see it. But I think the argument is quite weak. You can definitely tell that the Toyota RAV4 was easily identifiable. It wasn't probably camouflaged at all. But the argument by Kratz and many others was that the reason why the RAV4 was placed there in the first place was so that Stephen was going to crush it, right? So by crushing the vehicle, Stephen Avery was then able to place the crushed RAV4 amongst the other crushed vehicles, and no one would have detected it. So hence, in a way, Stephen would have gotten away with murder. Jack 61. Some comment.
I think it's I think it's a really very weak argument from Kratz. But for a lot of people that don't know any better and understand the process of crushing a car, because there's a lot has to go into it. Are you going to take a real risk of blowing yourself off all the hell? Because the gas tank has to be empty. We've been through all this. All the fluid's got to be emptied. I mean, even sometimes as far as, air conditioner, car conditioners, they have to be discharged, radiator fluid. There's just all kinds of process. And even then, it still probably wouldn't have, if there's blood in that car, they would have still found it. They cut all the tops off of them. And none of that shit was done. None of that stuff. That car was not prepared to go into the crusher in any way whatsoever. To me, it's just a weak argument, Doc.
Correct. But sorry, Susan.
I'm just wondering, had Pam of God not found the RAV on the property, if they were still looking for Teresa, I'm wondering if they could have gotten a search warrant just because of the fact that that's the last place Teresa was seen.
Did you say
without
get
having
it?
found the RAV.
Yeah,
if they could have gotten a search warrant.
I don't think so.
Well,
They'd already been there. They'd already been there twice and found nothing. So what are they
But
going to?
all they did was look at Stevens. I mean, being the type of property that it was, being a salvage yard,
Yes.
I'm just thinking that,
Oh.
if he had crushed the RAV
Yeah,
and
yes.
they had gotten a search warrant, a dog
Yes.
would have.
Yes.
Oh, if he had crushed the RAV.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh well,
dog
yeah. I
would've
think
found
yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, Doc. I don't mean to interrupt. You go ahead and answer.
No. I love where Susan is going with this. I thought
Well,
of exactly the same thing, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you why in a second. Jack 61.
Well, I mean, if he had actually have crushed that RAV, and they found it, or somebody had spotted, this blue-green vehicle that they suspected, yeah, I think they probably could have gotten a search warrant. But
Yep.
go ahead, Doc.
And the clue is this, and I think Susan has hit upon it, is the fact that remember the so-called change in plans by Wiegert on Saturday morning. And what they wanted to do was to actually get a citizen search party onto the property. Susan is 100% correct. Their next step was to actually search all the vehicles on the property. And what clued me in was if we have a look at the very next photograph, I think Susan has hit the nail on the head. They definitely would have gone in with citizen searches to search all the vehicles. And this clued me in. So last week, I showed this image here. This actually is from the November the 7th flyover. And as you can see, the photograph that was taken is crystal clear. So this was from an aeroplane flying very close to the southeast corner. And what you notice is the southeast corner is relatively devoid of vehicles. And if the aeroplane that both Drum, Pagel, and Baldwin, who were flying on November the 4th, they flew very close to the southeast corner. And what I discovered was that Drum himself is an extremely experienced pilot. He works for Lakeshore Aviation. He also puts on the air shows, right? He's in charge of that. So he's a big player in Manitowoc when it comes to aviation. So he is a very experienced pilot. He would have known how to fly his plane, I think it was a Cessna, quite low and at the right angles in order to look at the vehicles which were on the property. It's quite clear that had they flown, and they did, anywhere near this corner, that a straight line vision up the lane where the RAV4 was found, as you can see here with the red arrow. Now, interestingly, Kurt Drum said, oh yeah, look, I saw one guy with a camera taking pictures. Jack 61, you want to discuss the results of your FOIA request for pictures?
Yeah, that was an interesting passage that you found, Doc, talking about Drum and finding these Pogler or Wendy Ballum was taking still photos. So I immediately sent off a records request for those still photographs, and I got a reply actually pretty quickly, shockingly. They said no such photographs.
The fastest ever.
From Calumet County, yeah, they said would be 10 days. I got that right off the bat, and then within 2 days of that, I got a reply. No such still photographs exist.
No.
Well, I bet they don't.
Yep. Correct. And the reason why they would not give you any photographs is that this now provides very, very strong ammunition against the state, right? If they had a photograph, if they had a video still showing a silhouette or even the presence of a vehicle in that spot, they would have presented it. They would have said, hey, look, Tom Baresh, Tom Swinsky, they were mistaken. The RAV4 was there, right? Quite clearly, if they'd seen a RAV4, they would have got a search warrant and they would have come onto the property. It's quite clear that all the anecdotal evidence suggests that the Toyota RAV4 was not present on the salvage yard on November the 4th. But Susan hit the nail on the head. When you fly over this region, there's a couple of structures that absolutely stand out. One of them is that big crusher, right? As you're flying over it, remember, Pagel knows, Baldwin knows what a salvage yard is, right? I think the someone in the police department, correct me if I'm wrong, also owns a salvage yard. Is it the Herman brothers? Is it them?
Yeah.
There are, yeah. And they definitely would have also had a crusher. The crusher is a standard piece of equipment used to get rid of excess vehicles that no longer are fit for purpose. They crush it and they bring the crushed vehicles to metal scrap yards. So Drum flying his aeroplane on this corner of the salvage yard would have likely have noticed the crusher. And right next to the crusher on the left-hand side, there were a row of crushed vehicles. On November the 7th, they were removed because the fire brigade, remember guys, opened them all up using the jaws of life. So they went through all of the vehicles and they've obviously taken them away. But when you're flying over the salvage yard, you would have noted the crusher, you would have noted the crushed cars. Guys, is that reasonable to suggest? Right? Because they're looking for vehicles that would have flown over this area, that would have noticed the crusher. Yeah, is that a fair assumption?
I think so, yeah, absolutely.
More than likely.
Yeah. So this is where Susan's suggestion comes in. How about they didn't see the RAV4? What's the next logical thing in their minds? That Stephen had crushed the car. Right? Use the crusher, crush the vehicle, and place the RAV4 amongst the crushed vehicles.
That's right.
That's their second line of thinking, right? Hey, we never saw a RAV4 anywhere on the property. We searched all around where Teresa likely could have been. We never found the RAV4. Oh my God, they've got a crusher. What a great way to remove a vehicle out of circulation. And notice, my suspicion, I think, is proven correct. Where did Pam and Nicole Sturm actually go? Which direction? Out of all the directions that they could have gone in the salvage yard, which structure did they walk past?
I'm not sure they walked past the crusher. I think they, from what they said, what they testified to, they went and looked through these cars that are just parts of the crusher.
Yep. But it is potentially possible that they had a quick glance at the crushed vehicles. That unreasonable. Yeah. So that's not unreasonable if they're thinking, oh, I think Susan, I think your microphone's echoing. Yeah, that's better. It's not unreasonable for them to have walked past at a quick glance at the crushed vehicles. Now remember, they were looking for a green car. And it just so happened, does anyone remember what color car was actually in the crusher? Does anyone remember the color of the car?
Was it
I
red?
don't, Doc.
It was blue.
Oh.
Blue
Isn't that
crushed
crazy?
vehicle in the crusher. It was still there. So whoever, I think it could have been Stephen a couple of weeks ago, crushed the vehicle, but he never removed it. And Jack 61 is 100% correct. And we'll discuss it in a sec. You can't just crush a car. There are many, many things that you need to do to the car before you crush it. Because otherwise, if you crush a car full of petrol, potentially you can cause a spark and cause the crusher and the vehicle to blow up, which is not a good idea. But the other thing, of course, is that, and we'll talk about it in a sec, is that you've got both brothers on the property. You've got the father, the mother, you've got the nephews, he's got his sister, and potentially Stephen can't stop anyone from the public coming down into the pit area and looking for car parts. Guys, would you agree?
Yep.
He's got no control. He's got no control.
Absolutely.
Right? He's got no control. Once you leave the RAV, where it is, you're at the mercy of anyone walking past and going, hey, wait a minute, this looks suspicious, because it's a relatively new vehicle. It's the only one that's got car parts stuck on the side of it. So it really, really stuck out. We'll talk about it in a sec. So potentially, I'm not saying it happened, I'm only speculating, potentially the investigators, Baldwin, Pagel, would have probably thought, what about if he had crushed the vehicle? So I agree. What Pagel wanted to do with the so-called change in plans, you remember in Making a Murderer, there was a whole group of searchers just outside. And what Pagel wanted to do is to get permission from Stephen or whoever owned the salvage yard at the time for the searchers to come onto the property and search. And guess where they would have searched? They would have searched all the cars, the crusher, the crushed vehicles, to see if they could find a car that looked like Teresa's Toyota RAV4, right? So once you've got due course, then you can get a search warrant. And I agree with Jack 61. If Stephen had crushed the car, a cadaver dog would have absolutely picked up the scent of human decomposition in the RAV4. Guys, would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yep. Interesting. So that's just a thought. So from the air, they would have definitely been able to see whether there was a RAV4 in that lane, but they would have also noted the presence of a crusher. So Jack 61, if we can have a look at that next slide, please, unless there are any questions. So we'll just wait for the next slide to come up. So here's the crusher. And if Jack 61 can blow up that picture, there's actually a blue crushed vehicle in the crusher, right? It obviously is not the Toyota RAV4, but there is a blue vehicle in the crusher, right? They were looking for a green one, okay? So from the air, you can see that from the air, there would have been no problems at all in identifying the crusher. Right next to the crusher, if Jack 61, you can zoom out a little bit, you can see that there was a whole line of crushed cars, right? And that would have been visible from the air. So a reasonable hypothesis is, hey, maybe Stephen crushed the car. And remember what Kratz said? His suggestion that Stephen's intentions were to crush the RAV4. But Jack 61 is 100% correct. If you got a car, before you can crush it, you need to remove a lot of components from the car. You have to remove the battery. You have to drain the fluids from the vehicle, the oils. You have to remove the freon gas from the air conditioning, because potentially it could be very toxic. And also you have to remove the petrol tank and the petrol. So there's a lot of things that you need to do. Now, precisely where was Stephen Avery going to place the RAV4 in a garage, work on that RAV4 without his brothers or anybody else saying, Stephen, why are you working on this relatively new car? And oh my God, isn't that the car that the investigators are looking for? But guys, what do you think? Do you think that's preposterous that Stephen was going to somehow remove all these components and crush Teresa's vehicle? What do you think, Jack 61?
I think it's. I just don't think it's. Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. And they came up. I remember a couple of statements on Cam. He just ran out of time. Well, he had days. If this was actually what was going on, he had days to get that done. He could have worked on that inside of his garage for days and got everything prepared. So,
yep.
But then again, anybody could have come over and caught him.
Yep, 100% correct. The thing is this, right? The bottom line is this. Once you place the RAV4 there, you've lost control. You've got no control. And the RAV4, and I think you guys will agree, it was not properly disguised, as we'll show you in a second, right?
Oh, no.
Yep. So it's obvious that Stephen Avery, if Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey had murdered Teresa Hallbach, they'd never crushed the RAV, right? Because the RAV was found whole on November the 5th at about 10:30 by Pam and Nicole Sturm. Susan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, the state tried to claim, and I believe convicting a murderer did as well, that
Yes.
Stephen was going to come back from Crivets on Saturday afternoon after Earl closed up shop
Yep.
and do it then. But you still have Barb. She wasn't in Crivets that weekend.
Bobby wasn't.
Bobby wasn't.
No.
And
Earl.
Brian. I
Yep.
don't think
Earl.
Brian.
Yep.
Earl.
Yep.
Earl, but Earl lives off property, so if it was
Yes, he
Saturday
does.
afternoon,
Yep.
he would have been
Well,
gone. But there still would have
potentially.
been, my point is,
Yeah.
there still would have been witnesses on the property to hear that crusher. Even if he took it up to the garage, dismantled it, the act of crushing it is going to be very loud.
It is
But-
very
And
loud.
Yes.
he still would have had potential witnesses, and they're going to say, what the hell is going on Saturday afternoon, evening? Why is this happening? Who is operating that? I mean, yeah, I don't see it happening.
But 100% correct. But there's one weakness. The cat was out. The cat was out of the bag. Law enforcement were looking for Teresa and her RAV4. So there was a heightened presence of searchers all around the place and
That
police,
too.
right? Which means they would have no doubt, law enforcement, what did they do? They went to Crivets. And what did Stephen Avery say? They all lined up their cars while Stephen was at Crivets, and they made sure that Stephen went nowhere. On November the 8th, I believe, Stephen and his sister went back to the salvage yard saying, what's going on? Because they allowed Barb to go on the property to feed the dogs, but they didn't allow Stephen, which meant that the salvage yard and individuals at Crivets were being watched by law enforcement. There was a heightened sense. There were searchers going all around the property. There likely could have also been news reporters with helicopters. How precisely do you think, that Stephen was going to run the gauntlet of all law enforcement and people walking in the streets looking for Teresa and to go back onto the property, sight unseen, and crush a vehicle and then hide it? No, quite
No
clearly.
way.
Yeah,
No
no way. So that's what Mr. Kratz had pushed, that he was somehow going to come back and crush the vehicle. But the problem is this, guys. The cat was out of the bag. As soon as November the 3rd came, right? It was on the news, it was on the media. There were police everywhere, law enforcement everywhere. There is no doubt that the salvage yard would have been watched. And what did Stephen say? He had to ask the police officers, the law enforcement officers at Crivets, to move their vehicles so he can go out. So they were watching him. So he was a person of interest from the get-go. So there's no chance in hell that he could have incognito come back to the salvage yard, crush the vehicle and hit it. That's still not going to prevent citizen searchers potentially to come onto the property and search later on. Guys, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that law enforcement had already been to the property, if Stephen did this, if the RAB was there is no way in hell he would have gone to Crivets to begin with.
No.
I mean,
100%.
I think he would have done something the night of the 3rd, if anything.
Yes.
If he had RAB sitting there the way it was.
Yep.
It just makes no sense.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what people in chat say as well, right? Put it this way. If Stephen had committed this murder with Brendan Dassey, in my opinion, they would have removed or got rid of the RAV that night. And I don't believe crushing it would have been the smart thing to do, because potentially the forensic evidence is still present in the RAV4. If they were going to do this, they would have included everything in the RAV4, the electronics, the key, everything in the RAV4, get a couple of gallons of gasoline, 2 flares, remove the RAV4 off the property, maybe in a quarry, a nearby quarry, douse it in gasoline, put in 2 flares, problem solved. All your forensic evidence is gone. Guys, would you agree? Jack 61, what do you think?
Repeat that again, Doc. I'm sorry, I got distracted here.
Not at all. Not at all. What do you think would have been the most effective way to get rid of the RAV? Try and crush it?
Oh, no.
Drive it in a quarry or a nearby empty lot, douse it in gasoline, put in 2 flares.
Yeah, I've said for years, 2 5-gallon cans of kerosene on a road flare, boom, that RAV is burnt to the frame. Gone.
Yep. And by the time the fire brigade comes out, all the forensic evidence is gone.
Burned up.
Completely burned up. The way the RAV4 was left on the property, in my opinion, it was meant to be found, right? It was absolutely meant to be found.
It had to be found, and it had to be found, I mean, in my opinion, can't prove this, but it had to be found by a civilian. Couldn't be found by a cop.
100%.
Especially not MTSO.
100% correct. Law enforcement needed to keep at arm's length from the finding of the RAV4. That's why it was important. Now, remember, Pam Sturm and Nicole Sturm were questioned. Oh, no, we don't know anybody from law enforcement. We don't know this, we don't know that, because they knew that if there was any type of association between law enforcement, Pam Sturm, then that's potentially a conflict of interest, right? So that's why a citizen searcher had to have found the RAV4. And just a final point, those crushed cars, a cadaver dog went over all the crushed vehicles, including the crusher, the vehicle in the crusher. There were no alerts. But that didn't stop law enforcement from the fire brigade from opening up all the vehicles. And they found, what did they find? In all of those crushed vehicles, they found
nothing.
Right? They didn't even trust their own canines who detect human decomposition, right? So they found nothing in all of those crushed vehicles. But I like Susan's suggestion. I think their next course of action was to get citizen searchers on the property, check all the crushed vehicles. Maybe Stephen had crushed the car. All right, guys, do we have any questions? How we're doing so far?
Yeah, there's some questions, Doc. I'm just highlighting them. We'll get to them later.
We'll do them at the end. All right, awesome. Yep. So if we have a look at the next slide, I hate to bring this up, but that's exactly the line that they pushed in convicting a murderer. And Jack 61, do you have a comment?
I'm sorry. I just have to say what I've been saying for months now. This person did this for the money. She doesn't know jack shit about these cases. Only what she was told and read off the teleprompter. That's my opinion. Can't prove it, but she kind of proved that in the way the things that she said, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And I thought this was so melodramatic. Candace Owens standing in front of the crusher, and then the convicting murderer saying, well, Stephen Avery was going to crush the RAV4, right? So that was the main tenet, the main theme of what Stephen Avery was going to do, right? The irony is this. When Stephen was questioned on November the 9th, he goes, hey, if I'd done this, I would have crushed the son of a bitch. And he basically was saying, hey, if I'd done this murder, you think I'm going to leave the RAV4 just sitting out there in the open? I would have got rid of it. Even he told the Jack 61.
Absolutely. Another thing about this photograph, they try to make it like she's standing there in front of this crusher on the Avery salvage yard. But that crusher was gone. It's been gone for years. So they green screened it. it's so disingenuous.
Yeah. Possibly. So the main theme was that, well, Stephen was going to crush the vehicle, but he had run out of time. So Jack 61, if we have a look at the next slide. Katie, do you see the slide? Oh, no, there's one more slide before this one, Jack 61. G. Do you have that one? It's slide G.
Well, I should have. What the hell's going on here?
No hassles. Yep.
Gee, I'm sure I do.
Yep. No problems. So
yeah. Okay, just a second.
No hassles.
There we go.
Katie, do you see this?
I do.
Yep. Would you like to read it, please? This is an excerpt from Mr. Kratz's book, second edition. This is what Kratz wrote about what Stephen was going to do. Let's go for it.
Many ask why Avery would keep Teresa's car key. Why not just toss it into the burn barrel with her camera and phone instead of leaving it around for the cops to find? In my view, it's because Avery still needed the SUV to be operable. The car crusher on the Avery salvage yard, where Avery intended to pulverize Teresa's car to eliminate it as a source of evidence, was located in the farthest corner from his trailer, but relatively close to where he had stashed the SUV, just not close enough to push it or use the forklift. It would need to be driven to the crusher. If citizen searches hadn't stumbled on the RAV4 on November 5th while Avery was up north at the family's Crivets cottage, that's exactly what he would have done, perhaps as early as that afternoon. Crushing a car is not something that can be done discreetly, and it's not like such a steady stream of cars were being crushed that Steve could slip Teresa's in unnoticed. With the rest of the family away in Crivets, Avery would at last have had the opportunity to crush the car, unseen by any witnesses. Unfortunately for him, Steve had no way to predict that his brother Earl Avery, when asked, would give citizen searchers free range over Avery's salvage. The salvage lot was private property, and if Earl hadn't given permission, Pam Sturm would never have found Teresa's car that day. Steve could have crushed the car that afternoon and probably would have gotten away with murder. It's hard not to see this moment as a significant one, not just for Steve, but for the Avery family as a whole. The Averys stick together. They keep each other's secrets, and distrust of law enforcement is a pillar of the family code. Earl couldn't have known it, but on that cloudy November morning, he loosed.
It should have been loosened.
Okay, the bonds that had served and preserved the Avery clan for generations, and the troubled family would never quite regain its former unity.
Do we have any comments on that one?
Cute.
He's making a hell of a lot of assumptions in there. A lot of assumptions. And he's speculating quite a bit, but it's, in his opinion, to lead people say, well, these people stick together no matter what. Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't know if he's actually been away for the last 5 years, but I think we've seen that's not true at all. The family has just exploded.
Yep, disintegrated.
Sad to see.
Yep, correct. And, there's a couple of points here that I'd like to bring. Oh, sorry, Katie, did you have a comment?
Oh, no, I forgot to mute. Sorry, Doc.
That's right. There's a couple of points here. First of all, Mr. Kratz makes the assumption that's the reason why Stephen needed the key. he needed the key because he had to drive the RAV4 to the crusher, right? He believes that a forklift or an end loader, no way an end loader can, and Dom will go over it, no way could an end loader go from where the RAV4 was to the crusher. Stephen needed the key to drive the RAV4 to the crusher. But of course, to crush the vehicle, you need an end loader to put the vehicle in the crusher, right? So that really negates the fact that you needed the car key. Stephen didn't need the car key, right? And even he said, I think, to the detectives, he goes, hey, I could have hotwired it. You know, I know how to work with cars. I don't need a key, right? So that negates that. Also, the fact that Mr. Kratz believes that Stephen was going to somehow have no knowledge of the fact that Earl was going to be there on Saturday.
Right.
Well, let's think about this. They would have known beforehand who was going up the Crivets. But the family routinely goes up the Crivets. Someone has to run the salvage yard, right?
That's right.
If Stephen went up to Crivets, if Chuck went up to Crivets, well, who else is left? The only brother that's left is Earl.
That's
it. So you can imagine the farce of, I'm going to Crivets. My other brother's going to Crivets too. Earl is there. Oh, let's hope Earl plays ball because he's an Avery member and he's going to say no to anyone coming onto the property. How can that be the case when remember David Beach, Teresa's cousin? They never stopped him coming onto the property, right? Whoever wanted to, and on that Saturday morning, there were multiple people that came on, went in, had a search. Earl had no problems at all. It's very likely that Earl had no idea that the RAV4 was there. But if you, Stephen Avery, knew that the RAV4 was there, law enforcement were looking for Teresa and her vehicle, are you going to go to Crivets? I don't think so, right? And leave it up to chance? Guys, what do you think?
No.
Yeah.
I also want to ask Kratz, if Stephen was going to drive the RAV to the crusher, why did he unhook the battery?
Yes. Well, the argument was, well, Teresa could have had a remote control, and so if somebody had a duplicate remote control, they could have pressed the button and made the car either blow its horn or have the lights come on. So hence you can potentially detect where the RAV4 was. But remember, Stephen works with cars. How long do you think it would have taken him to work out whether it had one of those type of alarm systems?
Remote.
Yeah, the remote, right? The remote entry and things like that. It would have taken him 5 seconds. The guy works with cars. So I think what Kratz is proposing here is rather preposterous. But furthermore, his final statement at the end about the fact that the family stick together and have a distrust in law enforcement. What do you think Bobby Dassey did? Bobby Dassey went against his own uncle, right? By saying, yeah, I saw Teresa. If Bobby Dassey had such an aversion to law enforcement, all Bobby had to say was, I was in the shower. I was in the toilet. Didn't see a thing. Sorry.
Didn't see shit. Yep.
Correct. But now you can see that this concept of, they hate law enforcement, et cetera, well, Earl had no problems allowing people onto the property. And also Bobby had no issues in saying, no. I saw Teresa take photos. I saw Teresa heading towards my uncle's trailer, right? And of course, he testified against Stephen, and Bobby is the star witness. But now we have the complication of what Baresh and Sawinski have seen. So it is a very, very messy situation. Guys, do we have any comments on this?
Yeah, well, it's not about this. This is a little bit off topic, but I saw it and I thought it would be interesting to just go ahead and address it now. Key with the lanyard piece matching the lanyard strap in the RAV connects Avery 100% according to Kratz. I didn't make that connection. That behind the magic was talking to somebody else, but I just wanted to point out that you know they made kind of a deal about this lanyard being in the RAV. This is what Gruffy. Was in Cam. He said it was found in the glove box or the
Console.
little console there. Yeah, but they didn't take one photo of it in the console.
No, I haven't seen it.
So
I
for
think I've
you're
seen
right,
it.
and if they had that photo, we'd see it. They didn't photo it, or if they did, they buried it.
Correct.
But the main thing is we don't really know where that strap came from. For all I know, they went down to Walmart and bought it because they didn't document it. That's not my fault. That's not anyone else's here's fault. And that doesn't mean I'm leaning towards some grand conspiracy at all. I'm just saying this is what we know. We can't go any further than that. I have to, and that makes me question everything. If you found that, to me they photographed so many other things inside that RAV. Why wasn't that lanyard strap photographed? To me it just comes off as disingenuous and bullshit. Pardon my language.
Correct. But the other thing, of course, is that it made absolutely no sense for Stephen to grab the lanyard and the key and with the fob and remove it, separate it, and leave the lanyard behind. Because remember, he's got a bleeding finger. He's dripping blood. So I don't believe that they found any signs of blood either on the key, the blue fob, or on the lanyard. That's exactly why Kathleen Zona wants to test the material that's in the RAV4. All right, did Stephen leave his touch DNA on the lanyard? Who touched this material, right? And at the end of the day, why would Stephen actually be bothered in separating the key from the lanyard? Just wrap it up, take the whole thing, right? It makes no sense. If you leave the most incriminating piece of evidence, your blood, in the RAV4, what's the difference if Stephen actually took the entire lanyard with him? It makes no sense at all. Susan, did you have a comment?
No, Doc.
Okay. So
yeah, and I do think, Doc, I think you hit on another interesting point that I haven't really explored too much. Is that lanyard? If he'd handled that key and lanyard, chances are, and he was, actively bleeding, as Kratz has testified and said many times, there probably would have been blood on that lanyard.
Well, you have to grasp it in your hands and separate them. Right. You have to use it in order to separate it. Yep. And that is exactly why Kathleen Zona, with her DNA experts, wants to examine the touch DNA. Now, put it this way. Her analysis can either make Stephen look even more guilty or potentially exonerate him, have exculpatory evidence. So it's a big risk that Stephen is taking, because if you're bleeding, remember the whole notion was that Stephen was actively bleeding, left 5 drops of blood and 1 flake. And all of a sudden, there is no blood present on all the items that you require to drive a car. So Kratz came up with the suggestion that maybe Stephen bled after he dumped the RAV. Somehow he recut open his finger. But if he had recut open his finger after dumping the RAV, one would have expected to have found blood on the doorknobs, outside the RAV4, on the number plates, right? On the battery terminal. There's none. And that's why it looks really, really bizarre. The forensic evidence doesn't support what Kratz is pushing here. But if we have a look at the next picture, this beautifully highlights what Kratz is trying to say here, right? So on the top of the picture, this photograph, a beautiful photograph, was taken on November the 7th of a flyover. And where the red arrow is up on the top is where the RAV4 should have been. Mr. Kratz is saying that the distance from the RAV4 to the crusher is too long for an end loader. So that's why Stephen needed the key. Stephen needed the key to drive the RAV4 to the crusher and then use an end loader to load it into the crusher. Whereas those end loaders, they're powerful machines. They'll be easily able to drive the distance from where the RAV4 was to the crusher. In actual fact, the road is clear. There are no vehicles to negotiate. Pick it up, just drive it down there. Guys, what do you think?
I agree. That could have been done.
Yeah. Remember, Earl and Chuck, and I think Stephen as well, they know how to use the end loader. They're moving vehicles all the time. So picking up the RAV4 with an end loader and driving it to the crusher, that's no big deal. Stephen did not need the key, right? And the irony is, he even said when he was in, he goes, I don't need a key. I can just hotwire it. What do I need a key for, right? So here's the problem that I foresee. If Stephen placed the RAV4 there with Brendan, because in one of the interrogation sessions, Brendan said, yeah, me and Stephen, we drove the RAV4 down to the pit area, past his mum's house, past Dolores's home, past Chucky's home. Nobody saw a thing or heard a thing, and they dumped the RAV4 there. That means that the RAV4 was there from October the 31st, November the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and half day of the 5th, with no one seeing it. No member of the public, nobody from up in the air, flying an aeroplane. No one had seen the RAV. And remember, the RAV was only partially hidden. You can definitely still see it. Jack 61.
Yeah, that becomes a real problem when you have a multi-day affair and no one has seen that. I'm just talking about a member of the public. I'm not necessarily talking about any one of the Avery family members. Somebody from the public walking around. I mean, they have people coming there all the time. I'm sure they do. They were a pretty busy yard. People looking for parts.
Yes, 100% correct. Whereas, if Sawinski and Baresh are correct, that RAV4 was there for half a day, right? It got placed there in the early hours of November the 5th, which means there's no conflict, right? The anecdotal evidence of the other eyewitnesses that have seen the RAV4 at the turnaround, it makes perfect sense, right? The reason why nobody saw it is because it wasn't there. Guys, what do you think? Jack 61.
I agree, and I'm sorry. And, I can't really put anything into it except the end result, but the change of plans call.
Yes.
The boss has got something else he wants us to do.
Yes. ... Yes. And just before you go on, Jack 61, there are DCI reports in which the investigators phoned the scrap metal yards. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jack 61.
They did.
They were already one step ahead. They were thinking, shit, did they crush the RAV and bring the carcass, the crushed RAV, to a scrapyard dealer? You understand? To get it
That's
off
right.
property.
That's right. They did.
They were one step ahead. And the places that accept the car bodies that are crushed said, no, the Averys haven't been here, right? So it's interesting, and I like Susan's suggestion. The change in plans could have simply been, let's get 10 or 20 searchers on there, search everywhere, check the crusher, check the crushed vehicles. Do you see what appears to be potentially Teresa's RAV4? If you do, give us a call. We'll come on, get a search warrant, boom. Guys, it's no fluke that out of the blue, Pam Sturm rolls up at Teresa's house and says to Ryan Hilligus, I want to search the Avery salvage yard. Oh, okay. Here's a camera, here's a map, and here's the direct phone number to Sheriff Paywall. Guys, put two and two together.
Yeah, when we found all that out after we got the documentation, it was a light bulb moment for me.
Yep.
And then as you read deeper into it, I'm just saying the appearance from the outside, from standing back 20,000 feet,
Yep.
Is something really odd went on. because again, Ryan and Scott knew that Teresa had an appointment at Avery Salvage Yard. Why hadn't they went ahead and sent somebody else before Pam and Nicole got there to ask for permission to, right?
Yep, 100% correct.
Doesn't make sense to me, Doc.
No. To me, in my opinion, either they got a tip that they saw the RAV, or their intentions were, check all the cars, check the crusher, check the crushed vehicles. Stephen or whoever could have crushed the vehicle. If you find anything that resembles a RAV4, call us. Lo and behold, there it was in the pit area that everyone had missed. There it was, right? And then, like I said, when you factor in Baresh, when you factor in Sawinski, it makes chronologically, it makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Jack 61.
Doc, I don't know. These coincidences.
Yeah.
I'm so guarded against them because in real life, they do happen. But in these instances, it really comes. It's almost like, and I can't prove it, and I don't really want to start a bunch of innuendo. But to me, it's like Pagel found out something. Somebody called him and said, "Hey, you need to take a look at the Avery Salvage Yard. Check it out."
Correct. Click. And remember, I think were there 5 girls called Teresa's friends?
Yeah, the 5 kittens that we call them. Yep, that's right. Yep. They weren't discovered until 12:35 or 12:40.
And told to get off the property, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? What's the very first thing that we get said to Pam? Have you got permission to be on there?
That's right.
Right?
And clearly, we found out clearly that her 5 friends had come in through the Redoubt pit because he gave them permission to look around. And they just kept walking and walked right into the Avery Salvage Yard without permission.
Now, what is interesting is this. Remember, I showed you in last week's podcast from the quarry side, because there's a ridge, a berm, you can't see the cars. You actually have to be on the other side, which meant that the 5 girls were actually on the Avery Salvage Yard without permission. Right? And all you have to do is, all you have to do is look down the lane. You would have spotted the RAV4, right? Which is incredible because they were told, the girls were told, get off the property right now. But what is incredible is that neither Pagel or we get the first words that came out of their mouth, never came out of their mouth was, have you found Teresa?
Nope. No inquiry. No urgency. No questions.
None. Have you found any evidence of violence? Did you find a weapon? Did you see blood? Nope. It's all about the car. As if they knew, shit, the car's there. Just confirm it. That's why they got the VIN number to be read. Okay. To me, what convinced me completely that the RAV4 was planted was the plates. If you have a look down the bottom of the picture, that's where the number plates were found. Both plates were found, I think it was November the 8th, and they were found by the fire chief or one of the fire brigade people. They were crumpled up and they were just thrown in the back seat. What is damning is this, and makes no logical sense, and I'd love to get the opinions of everyone on the panel. In fact, I'm going to ask Jack 61, why would Stephen remove the number plates from the RAV4?
This makes no sense at all. I don't know any reason. I just don't.
Okay.
I mean, they're going to find, without stripping off every VIN number on the car and the, I think it's there in 5 different places scattered around the vehicle. Unless you're going to do that and make it really difficult for police to identify, they're going to find out whose freaking car it is.
Yes. Agree. Susan, why would Stephen remove the number plates?
I can't.
Oh, you're breaking up.
You can't hear me?
We can hear you
now.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I it's not that I was breaking up. It's like my mind is freezing because I can't come up with an answer for you why Stephen would take those plates and then toss them where they were found. I mean,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Makes
Katie.
no sense.
No, it doesn't. Katie, why would Stephen remove those number plates and then dump them out in the open?
Yeah, I can't think of a reason why he would do that or why he would hide the car on his property. I mean, none of that makes any sense.
Okay, interesting. I don't recall. Why would Stephen remove the number plates?
I think they would probably say he was doing it to make it less likely to be recognized as hers, but it doesn't make sense, like the others said.
Okay, interesting. Now, let me tell you what Mr. Kratz said. The reason why he put the number plates there is because Stephen was going home. Except who lives in the same direction as Stephen? If you extend it to the right, who else lives further down?
We all know.
Yeah.
Bobby.
Bobby as well. And I'm not saying Bobby left the number plates, but I'm just saying you can't use the argument that Stephen lived down there. The star witness lived down there too. But what is damning is this. Both the car and the plates were on the periphery. Okay, easy access. If Stephen did this, he had 3,800 cars to place the number plates in. All he had to do was get a pair of tin snips and cut them up, melt them down, boom, gone. In my opinion, both the RAV4 and the plates were there to be found. Guys,
Had to be found. Absolutely, they had to. I mean, he could have taken a blowtorch and melted those plates in 10 minutes. Gone.
Yep.
Just be metal, melted metal.
Yep. So if you let loose 20 or 30 citizen searchers, where the plates are is on the walkway, the gravel road walkway, right? How long do you think it would have taken a searcher to look inside the vehicle? Would have taken them 10 seconds. Yet they missed the plates the first time round, correct?
Yeah, it's always kind of bothered me because the plates were rolled up. How they really got found, it's all I can't really put anything with it other than okay, they were. But how did that occur if they were rolled up and not really, numbers sticking out to catch somebody's eye?
They were folded in, and apparently the fire guy picked them up and uncurled them.
He did.
Then put them back in the car, and that's when they photographed it. But
Yeah.
they were folded up, right? So somehow the fire guy put two and two together, saw the plates on the back seat, unwrapped them. He was with a female officer who had the license plate number, and that's how they confirmed it. They said, shit, this is Teresa Horbach's license plate. This is on November the 8th. That's when they found the key, the burn pit, everything happened essentially.
Banner day.
Correct. But sorry, Jack 61.
I just got a quick question from Kelly. We can go ahead and answer this one. Kelly McAlien. Hi to all. Thanks for coming, Kelly. Do you remember, did Wiegert ask Pam God what the plate number was first before asking for the VIN? I think they asked if plates were on it. I think Pagel asked that before he handed off the phone to Wiegert.
Correct. Yeah, I believe that Pam Sturm said no, the plates, there are no license plates.
Correct.
Correct. Yep, 100% correct. But again, if you're Stephen, sorry, did somebody have a Katie? Is that you?
Yes, they asked if the plates were on it, but they didn't ask. Did you see Teresa Horbach?
No,
they didn't ask. Didn't ask
Are
about
the
Teresa at
plates
all.
on it?
No.
That's
Yeah.
Yep, correct. They were more
no,
concerned.
the plates are missing.
Yep. So if you're Stephen and your intention is to crush the RAV, and just say you took the plates off, why don't you just simply put them under the back seat of the car with the electronics, with everything. Just remove the battery from all the electronic devices. They're off. No one's going to detect them. Put all the evidence together in the one spot, crush the vehicle or burn the vehicle, get rid of all the forensic evidence in one hit. But as you can see, what you see here is you have more evidence, not less. So Stephen Avery is putting out breadcrumbs all over the place. It doesn't make any sense. Guys, what do you think?
It doesn't make any sense at all to me.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. It's
Totally
sort of
agree.
and the other bizarre thing is the cremains. The same things happened to the cremains. Instead of the cremains remaining in one spot, you got at least three. Well, you got three piles in the Manitowoc County gravel pit. You've got human cremains allegedly in Yonder Burn Barrel number 2, and some cremains in Stephen Avery's burn pit. So you have a spreading.
That other damn it, that other quarry to the right there,
Nichols Quarry.
Yes, they found something there too.
Yes, correct. So again, you've got this dissemination of evidence rather than putting it all together. It honestly makes no sense at all. But let's have a look at the number plates. If we can have a look at the next slide, Jack 61. This really intrigued me about the number plates. So the RAV4 and the station wagon, they were found at the boundaries of the Avery salvage yard, not internal, well hidden. They're on the periphery. Now, you look at the RAV4 as it is, right? This was taken by Nicole Sturm on November the 5th. There's a big RAV4 Toyota sign on there. There's a Toyota emblem. There's the Lemure sticker. There was no means to disguise that RAV4. Even the piddly branches that were put on the back still did not disguise the RAV4. You can make out the shape. You can make out the model. You can make out the color. And the big fat RAV4 sign Toyota. I reckon the James Webb telescope would have been able to see that from outer space. If you're going to hide the RAV, you would at least take off the wheel cover. You would put something on the back of the RAV to make sure that no one can spot RAV4 Toyota, right? So the RAV4 was not well hidden at all, as Mr. Kratz alluded to. It's not. In fact, it was found in record time by Pam Sturm. But for some unknown reason, Stephen allegedly took off the front number plate, the back number plate, folded them, walked away with them. Remember, Brendan is with him, and somehow went up to that station wagon there and threw them in the back seat. And no one saw a thing, right? So again, I can't answer. Why would Stephen be even bothered removing the plates from the RAV4 if he left all the distinguishing marks on the RAV4 that anyone could find? Who cares if their number plates are on there? It's a Toyota RAV4. They are looking for a Toyota RAV4. So guys, I can't explain why Stephen would remove those plates. Jack 61.
Yeah, I can't make it work, Doc. And I've tried desperately to make some kind of sense, make it make sense kind of thing we always say, but I can't.
Is anyone in chat, have they made any comments about what the hell those number plates are doing there?
Well, I've just been trying to keep up. I mean, there's been a few comments, but nothing that would explain why those plates were removed. No.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I cannot work it out. There was no need to remove those number plates, right? Just put something in front to hide them. Boom. Why spend extra time removing the plates and potentially getting caught, right? Because remember, Chuck even knew which vehicle the plates were in. And remember what we discussed a couple of podcasts ago. Right behind that vehicle was an end loader. And Stephen said the end loader next to the blue shed, you can see the blue shed in the background. That's what I wanted Teresa to come back and photograph. And I know it's probably coincidental, but right in front of the end loader, that's where the number plates were found. Interesting.
Doc,
Yes.
did they check the plates for DNA?
Yes.
Can we have the next slide to Jack 60?
Well, but before we move on, I'm going to go ahead and answer this question from Behind
Yes.
the Magic. They said that are the plates renewed on one's birthday? Like if Teresa's birthday was in March, shouldn't the sticker be March? And I know it varies by state. I know here in my state, Michigan, it is renewed on your birthday.
Okay.
So, depending on whoever the owner of the car is, that's what the sticker month and year is going to be, and they change the color of it. You typically, unless your plate's in really bad shape, you don't, or you ordered a vanity plate, you keep your same plate. You just wipe off the sticker area, you clean it, put your new sticker on, and move on. So I don't know exactly how they do it in Wisconsin. Maybe somebody here that's local can tell us. I don't know why hers doesn't have, oh, hold on, let me look at this here. Let me take this question off. I'm going to blow this up here.
September 06.
Well, the 06 is the year, and
Yes.
I can't really make out the rest. I mean, you could tell the stickers kind of pile on top of other stickers. You can see them underneath there.
Yep.
But I think, well, I don't know.
It says September on the left, Jack, on the bottom.
It does. Yeah, I really can't.
Her birthday's in June or July?
I think it's March. I think it's March.
22nd.
Oh, March 22nd. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it has to do with, in Wisconsin, if it has to do when the car was registered, changed owners to the new owner, and that's how they go by it. It could be. I don't know. I can't answer that one. We need a local.
Yep. I'm not
Wisconsin,
sure whether Henbury.
It says Wisconsin is 1 month before you bought it.
Oh, okay.
Kevin Grelson said that.
Okay. I know that Henbury has done a huge amount of work on the RAV4. I'm not sure whether he looked into the licensing, the license plate. Interesting. Okay. So if we have a look at the next slide. Well, good question. The both license plate numbers refer to item AJ and AK that were sent to Cherie Cohen. And this is Exhibit 313, which you can find in our library on our website. The number plates were sent to Cherie Cohen. Interestingly, no blood was detected on either of the plates. So they would have done either by visual examination or by a swab using phenolphthalein. No blood was detected. This to me is troubling because you literally have to handle the plates, right, guys? If you're going to take them off, you have to take off the screws, remove them from the vehicle, and then fold them. If you're bleeding, it's hard to believe that no blood is going to be present on either of those plates. Cohen was able to isolate DNA from both plates. What's intriguing is the last comment. That, Jack 61, you want to read what Cohen wrote in her report? Can you see it? The last comment?
The bottom one, Doc.
Where it says the levels.
The levels of male DNA detected from items AJ and AK were insufficient for
autosomal
DNA STR typing.
That's a what the fuck moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, so it seems to me with advances in DNA, That'd be a really good thing to test the other half of those swabs, right? That
I
should be
agree.
in evidence.
Yeah, correct. Or just re-swab it. But here's the disturbing thing. She found male DNA on the plates and said, but the level was so low, I couldn't get a STR profile. And
Well,
she
she got
didn't.
it well enough to find out it was male.
Yep. And for the male market to come up, it's a melanogenin, right? Which meant that she got some alleles coming up to determine that it was male. Otherwise, she would have said, I don't know what the sample was. It could have been male, female, unknown. But she said in her report, the levels of male DNA detected on the number plates was insufficient, which meant that she could have easily got a partial profile, but it wasn't enough to give a full profile. Instead of retesting, just left it like that.
She
Guys,
also could have excluded also, possibly,
Yes.
right?
yes, exactly with A23. I've had this argument for ages. So no. The argument is no. She never excluded Steve. Yes, she did, because she couldn't find Stephen's DNA in the back of the RAV4. Otherwise, she would have said in court, no, I can't exclude him. I have to retest A23. So Kathleen Zellner has picked up on all these oddities, the number plates, A23, I think the flash card that Jack 61 talks about in the back of the RAV. She goes, no, give me the RAV, give me the items, I'll get them all tested. We'll work out who left their DNA on these items, right? Now, quite clearly, the state is saying Stephen murdered Teresa Hobart. Stephen put the RAV4 to be crushed. Stephen took off the number plates. And here you are, the chief tech goes, the level of male DNA was too low. I couldn't get a profile. Instead of doing a re-extraction, she never did. I've never. Now, don't you think that's your case right there? If you can prove that Stephen had his hands on the plates.
Oh yeah, it's over. It's over.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's over.
That's inculpatory, right? If Stephen's DNA is A23, that's inculpatory.
It's over. That's right.
We wouldn't be here. We'll be looking at another case. We'd have gone, he's finished.
Gone. He's done. He's toast.
But the fact that they left all these holes and gaps in the investigation, Zellner's going, just give me the RAV. Give me the blinker. Give me the plates. I'll test it. Right?
Yep.
We'll find out one way or another. Now, the next picture just blew my mind. Can we have a look at the next?
Before we move on, Danny Burfan has a question and you can answer. Let's say Danny says, can they run the partial DNA through ancestry sites to narrow it to a family? If they have the sequence, they don't need to retest anything.
In my opinion, it's definitely not a good idea to run partial profiles, because potentially you can get millions of hits, right? So if you're putting that type of data inside a database, it's not exclusive enough. Even when I remember when they caught the Golden Gate Killer, even when they had a full DNA profile, they had many families that they had to look at, and it took a while to narrow down who the potential suspect was. So if you've got a partial profile, it's going to be a nightmare. You can have potentially thousands, hundreds of thousands of hits because we have common alleles. The whole idea is to re-extract, get a full genomic profile, then do familial studies or put it into a DNA database and see if you can find who the potential person was that left their DNA on the plates. Now, this did my head in. What the hell is Brenda Schuller doing in the crime lab with gloves looking at the number plates? Can anyone explain that?
I cannot. Blew me away.
I'm there. Wait a minute. You allow someone who's not an official investigator in a crime lab looking at the number plates in a box but you won't give them to Kathleen Zellner, Susan.
That's probably more likely at the police department. I don't know
Wherever-
if it's at the crime lab, but wherever it is. And Brenda made the statement, well, I didn't actually touch the license plates. I didn't really see them. This is just perceptions are what they are. They just did this shot to show access. I don't know.
Is
Well,
it a
that's
prop?
No.
Oh, that's the rule.
I think
license.
it's the actual
Okay.
license plate.
You can see the crime scene tape.
And you
Yeah.
can see the stickers on top of the box, the orange stickers, property tag stickers.
Yep.
I
Yep.
think it was a kind of a show off move to see, hey,
think
look,
so.
we had full access,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Yep. And Kathleen Zellner doesn't. Katie, do you have any comments?
Oh no, I just can't remember to mute my mic, I guess.
Yeah, and the fingerprint guy, analysis guy, found no prints on the plates. No identifiable prints on the plates, but there's DNA on there, right? And that's why Kathleen Zellner wants those plates. Let's find out who left their DNA on there. All right, guys, do we have any questions so far? How we doing? Do we have anybody in chat?
Oh, Lord, yeah. We've got, let's see, with everybody combined, we got 108.
Oh,
109.
fantastic.
Everybody from Twitter and Facebook. I mean,
Fantastic.
yeah, that's what I'm showing up here. Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Welcome wherever you're viewing. All right. So that's that aspect there. Now let's dive back into the book, because Judge Angela Sukowicz, I can't explain her actions. Now, as we talked about in last week's podcast, there is a total lack of both supporting physical and forensic evidence that places Brendan Dassey inside Stephen Avery's trailer. There's no corroborating evidence that places Teresa Hallbach inside Stephen Avery's trailer. And you can't associate Brendan Dassey with Teresa or her raffle. There's no physical or supporting forensic evidence that ties Brendan Dassey to any crime involving Teresa Hallbach, right? But the judge decided it was a good idea to use the confession of Brendan Dassey. And sorry, I don't mean to laugh as in a humor, because this is absolutely deadly serious.
It's horrible. I mean, a lot of times, and I want to just say that a lot of times we use the laughter as an escape from the horrible reality that it really is.
Yes, 100%, because I cannot believe the action of both law enforcement and also legal judges in their manner and their logic. So if we have a look, so the question is, there is no supporting forensic evidence or physical evidence.
Not one molecule, not one.
So how did the state justify this, right? We have a look at the next slide, right? So I don't recall. Do you see the slide?
I do.
Yep. So Edelstein, which was the attorney for Brendan Dassey, he questioned Mark Wiegert, and he basically spelt it out to Mark. Mate, there's nothing that ties Brendan to the crime. Have a read what and Jack 61. Are you able to read out the answer? That's Mark Wiegert. Have a look what Edelstein said to Mark Wiegert in court.
These jeans, the cuff, the bullets, the shells, the shovels, the seat, everything that the government paraded in here, other than these which contain what are believed to be bleach spots, which Brendan told you about, none of these items have fingerprints, DNA, or any other scientific evidence connecting Brendan Dassey to the death of Teresa Hallbach. Yes or no? Or yes or no?
That's correct. They had 5 days to clean up.
That's it. That's it. So, in other words, the investigators could not explain why they couldn't find any physical or corroborating evidence to link Brendan to the murder of Teresa Halbach. The only thing that a co-lead investigator came up with, despite a multi-million-dollar investigation, was they had 5 days to clean up.
I so wish Edelston would have challenged him and said, "Oh, you're presenting evidence of a cleanup? Why haven't we seen that?" I really wish
Yeah,
Edelston or Fremgen had challenged him, because that dropping that bomb should not have went unanswered, in my opinion.
They
That
just
was-
let that stand, and when you were reading the transcript, that was the end of it.
That was the end of it. That's
Oh.
it.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
frustrating.
I just left it like that. Mark Wiegert just walked off. Sorry, Susan.
I just want to say the fact that Brendan had bleach stains on his jeans is no evidence at all.
No.
I mean, I'm sorry, that could have happened at any time. I mean, it's
Correct.
just ridiculous.
Correct. But they have to associate it as a sign of guilt, right? So how did convicting a murderer answer this question? There's nothing that ties Brendan to the crime. This is the way convicting a murderer handled it. Can we have the next slide, please? Right? The way they handled it was, don't worry about it. They used a quote from Carl Sagan. I'll read it. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. So they're saying, don't worry about it. There's nothing that you can forensically tie Brendan to the murder of Teresa Halbach. It doesn't mean the evidence wasn't there. Okay, we luminol treated, we got a cadaver dog, we did this, we did DNA extractions, we found nothing. Don't worry about it. But what Carl Sagan was talking about is that Carl Sagan, he used to work for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. So the reason why he used that statement was, hey, even if we send radio signals out into the sky and we don't get an answer, it doesn't mean that there's no extraterrestrial life out there. It means that they're so far away, they may not have received our message. But to then misapply it to a forensic case, a murder case, is completely ludicrous. So here's what they're saying. In essence, this is what they're saying. According to Brendan, they slashed Teresa's throat. They stabbed her in the abdomen. No blood, no problems. Teresa was shot 11 times, including twice in the skull. And the brain is a very vascular organ, plenty of blood supply to the brain. No blood, no problems, right? No blood, no problems, no tissue, no hair, no skin, no problems, right? Being carried from the garage on a creeper to the burn pit, no blood, no skin, no hair, no tissue. Mark, you have to read what Mark Wiegert said. Oh, I didn't expect anything there. Didn't expect anything there. So, also, dismembering a human being. Dismembering a human, no blood, no skin, no tissue, nothing. No problem. How in God's name can you do this horrendous crime to another human being and find no forensic evidence except item FL? And I can explain item FL in 2 seconds. Jack 61, make some sense of this madness.
I cannot. It doesn't work. No. I'm sorry that if it had went down the way that it was presented in court, they would have definitely found something inside that trailer. And there's not one thing connected to Brendan at all in any of it, even in the RAV. I mean, they didn't test the hood, but they didn't test that hood, which they allegedly picked up and carried, him and Stephen, to put on the side of that. They didn't even test it and bother. But there's nothing.
remember they left it out in the rain. So potentially forensic evidence got washed away. Susan.
There is no crime scene on the Avery property.
I agree.
There's no crime
I agree.
scene.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree. But this is the madness and the lunacy. So they pipe out. They had forensic scientists on convicting a murder saying multiple stabbing doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get any blood spray. The blood. Remember what Fassbender said? Oh, the blood went all in the cavity.
That's right.
Any of these major blood vessels, you're squirting blood several meters into the air. Nothing. How in modern day America can you spew crap like this? And they even said there was no blood on the mattress or the bedding because Stephen burnt it all, including his bed. His bed. Right? And they said, did you find any evidence of box springs, any springs in the burn pit? No. They found no evidence of anything being burnt. They checked the mattress, they checked the bedding, and even Brendan Dassey said there was blood. There was blood on the mattress, there was blood everywhere. They checked the place from top to bottom. Jack 61, back me up. They tore Stephen's bedroom apart.
When they went back on, they did. When they went back on March 1st. And then on March 2nd, they ripped up carpeting leading back to the bedroom. They ripped up the carpet in the bedroom. This took paneling. They destroyed that bedroom.
Yes. And sorry, Jack 61.
I was going to say one more thing, where we're talking about, this is basically, we're talking about what the state, Kratz, and even Convicting a Murderer put out. But we forget about the day-to-day news broadcast, and we play some of them from time to time. But this was a drumbeat going on constantly with the media, reporting on what they've been told during these daily press conferences. They're reporting this as it's being told, doled out. And then when Brendan was arrested, it just blew up. It blew the case apart, and that shit was everywhere. Can't tell me that it didn't have an effect. Can't tell me that. It had to.
100% correct. 100% correct. So, Susan.
I don't know. I saw recently that Kratz is saying that. Did any of the jurors mention the press conference? Well,
yeah.
If they had, they wouldn't have been picked as a juror. And I'm sure there were people what-eared that did talk about that.
And I posted all that in a reply to him on X. I linked every day of voir dire and the strikes.
Perfect.
Correct. And I also had to remind Mr. Kratz that even in his own book, he had regretted doing the press conference.
Yep.
Right? He even said it in black and white that he'd regretted doing the press conference. Furthermore, Professor Gershman, I think his name was hyper critical of Kratz committing professional misconduct on I think about 10 or 11 different separate items. So the way Mr. Kratz works is very simple, and it's very easy to work out. And that is, it's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask permission.
That's right.
He shoots from the hip first, causes the damage, and then throws his arms in the air and says, it's not my fault. I was permitted to legally do that press conference, but in the end, I should have just given the brief to the press, and they would have run with it. What about doing your due fucking diligence and checking the veracity of Brendan Dassey's statements and seeing if there's any backup before you shoot your mouth off?
Well, there's the due process end of it, which is directly tied to what you said, Doc. But to make statements that he made, I really wish we had that entire press conference. And we looked high and low for a copy of it, but we could never find a full copy. But to broadcast these things and saying, you know, he's basically intimating that they had evidence that Brendan was involved, and they really didn't. He didn't have. He didn't have anything. And he says, we're not going to comment about that right now because he was asked about it. Not going to comment about that. You can't comment because you didn't have anything.
Correct. And I think once you have that information and concept out, you saw it on Making a Murderer when they interviewed the people in the streets. We're shocked, we're disgusted, we thought they were innocent, but now we believe that they're guilty.
Yep.
All based on the press conference, right? And that goes to show the power of those words and the power of perception. And Mr. Kratz was a master at doing that. And why did he do it? To silence the supporters of Stephen. Any form of sympathy. He was the poster child for the Innocence Project. Boom. Let's hit them, and let's hit them hard. Susan.
He did it. He did it for one reason: to win his case.
Oh, correct.
Yep. That's
And
right.
be famous.
Correct. Correct. Except, of course, it's completely freaking backfired because groups like us and many others who do deep dive research and have got all the documents can actually show the fallacies of the arguments being presented. And that's why now we're at a crossroads. If what Sawinski and Baresh observed are correct, the state's in big trouble, right? And now, if we look at the next slide, the judge, Angela, now goes into a territory that she never, ever should have ventured into, right? So we'll just wait for the next slide.
Yeah, give me just 1 second. I got to take this off screen for just a second.
Yeah, it's slide 58A, right? So
I can
again,
say, Kratzy, karma's a bitch.
Yes, it is. Karma is correct. And I think that's why this case is so emotive, because now it's being de-engineered, right? What happened back in the trial is now being taken apart completely, and it's been exposed for what it is. But when now a judge uses the confession of Brendan Dassey as fact, that's now when you're going to start getting into some dangerous territory. Katie, do you see the slide?
I do.
Yeah. Would you just like to read the very first slide, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Fast forward 16 years to the summer of 2023, the judge from Sheboygan assigned to replace Patrick Willis for handling Avery's post-conviction appeals, Angie sucks at this, struggled to come up with legitimate reasons to deny Avery an evidentiary hearing or a new trial. Then, upon further reflection, the judge had an idea. She would cite the Brendan Dassey confession to justify her decision in the Avery case.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments? Jack 61.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but to pull Brendan into this, he wasn't part of Stephen's trial. I don't know the legality, the problems surrounding that, but you know, again, I just have to go look to the end result. She removed herself from the case. This isn't the only instance, Doc, but certainly I think it was a mistake. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it was a huge boo-boo.
Yep. And for good reason, I believe. Susan.
I call it judicial misconduct.
Yes. It's
a lot of her decisions were based on judicial misconduct, coming to conclusions instead of having an evidentiary hearing.
Yep, I agree.
Unreal.
Okay. So let's have a look at this. Let's deep dive into this. We have a look at the next slide, Jack 61. If you look at this kid has spent 18 years in prison so far. 18 years. He's not getting out to 2048 if he gets out. That's parole. And he has to be a registered sex offender. There is the possibility, I reckon 99.99% possibility Brendan Dassey did nothing. He's in prison for rape, sexual assault, for murder, mutilation of a corpse, the whole lot. So the question must be asked, what links Brendan to Teresa? And the answer is words. Words. What are those words? How did he come up with these things that he said he did? The Reid technique, right? And the people know, even law enforcement officers know, that the Reid technique can solicit false confessions. It's a known fact. So the scary thing is, he has sat in prison for 18 years based on words because he confessed, but Brendan Dassey recanted, right? I didn't do it, and I don't know why I said those things. And look who Brendan had to deal with. Kaczynski, O'Kelly, Fassbender, Wiegert, Fallon, Kratz, and Garn. They were no match when his own attorneys were working for the state. Jack 61.
Destroyed his case. Kaczynski, I mean, bad enough what Ralph, I can't think of his last name, starts with an S.
Alinsky, I think
Bad-
it was. Yeah.
Yeah, Sawazinski. Bad enough what he did, but Kaczynski and O'Kelly destroyed his case. He had no chance. None. The damage was done. It didn't matter if Kaczynski got thrown off the case in August.
Correct.
It was too late. They had basically 5 months of just ruining this kid's life, in my opinion.
Correct. All right, guys, let's continue. We've got a few more slides and then we're done. So let's see what Judge Angie said. Susan, are you happy to read the next slide?
Sure, Doc.
Yep, let's go for it.
The defendant further failed to offer any facts of record to establish a consistent plan to frame the defendant, or any theory including or excluding law enforcement involvement, which implicates the defendant in this crime. Sakevich opined, the defendant's theory that Bobby framed him for this murder also fails to acknowledge a significant fact in relation to this crime, to which Brendan Dassey confessed and was convicted of participating in the murder of Miss Hallwell. Brendan specifically implicated the defendant in this crime, and his conviction has been affirmed by the appellate courts and remains of record. All of the allegations implicating Bobby in the murder and the framing of the defendant are pure speculation and are not supported by any evidence submitted by the defendant. As such, the defendant failed to satisfy the test in Edmonds, Denny, and Wilson.
Do we have any comments? Susan, do you have some comments? Katie. I think everyone is speechless. Do we have any comments, guys?
Well, again, I just think that judicial misconduct, I think is how Susan labeled it. I don't.
Yeah.
Does that sound about right? For her to pull Brendan into her reply, I mean, I don't understand what the legal ramifications are, but I think it was a huge mistake from a judge to base her opinion and her order and decision and with him pulled into it.
I 100% agree. You're now going into very, very shaky grounds. And that's why we need to get into this, because the judge using Brendan Dassey's confession to say, I throw out everything regarding Bobby Dassey. Brendan Dassey implicated Stephen. They were there together. So it must have happened in the way described by Brendan. even though Brendan wasn't actually called to testify in Stephen's trial. Susan.
Yeah, the fact that she says all of the allegations implicating Bobby are pure speculation and are not supported by any evidence. Well, she failed to have an evidentiary hearing about Sawinski and Baresh.
That's right. That's
Correct.
right.
So,
And another thing, I'm sorry, Susan, but to point out, she's making Brendan a co-defendant when they intentionally separated the two a week before trial. That was a big thing, a motion hearing that came up, that they had to separate Brendan away from Stephen. So, but now she's pulling him back in as if he was part of Avery's trial, and he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. And there's a lot of things that we need to go over here very, very carefully, because this is deadly serious. And I'm sure Kathleen Zellner will argue these very, very same points. Brendan Dassey actually recanted the moment he had finished the interview with Fassbender and Uyghur, when he said to his mum, "I got to my head," right? So straight away he was going, what the hell just happened? But it gets worse than that. We'll have a look at the next slide. At this, I'll just wait for the next slide to come up. This is something I cannot understand. Tom Fallon is a legal guru. He knows the law. He knows facts. And are you trying to tell me, and I'll read it out, that Tom Fallon was unaware of this fact, that in the US, more than 25% of overturned wrongful convictions involve a false confession, right? Involve a false confession. But Fallon would have absolutely nothing to do with it, right? I don't recall. Do you see the slide?
Yes, I do.
Oh, this is what Tom Fallon said in his closing argument. Let's go for it.
People who are innocent don't confess. The defendant confessed because he was guilty, because he did it. An innocent person is going to deny the suggestion. They're not going to admit this. They're not to the degree that the defendant did. Now, let's keep one other thing in mind. I'll listen to that argument. It makes my blood boil, because those officers treated the defendant a heck of a lot better than he treated Teresa Halbach.
So
I want to punch him.
So do I. Get in line.
Me too.
That pisses me.
Fucking turtle face.
yep.
Excuse my French.
No, not at all. And here's the bizarre thing before you guys come on and give your comments. Every time Brendan told the truth, his narrative, what he believed to be the truth, everyone told him, "You're lying." They called him a liar. If you notice what Tom Fallon said, he goes, no, I don't accept this false confession. No, he's guilty. He's absolutely guilty. Why? Well, he would never admit to doing something like this. Whereas I'm going to give you an example of exactly another case in which they did exactly that. They confessed to a brutal murder, a double murder. They never took that. They weren't even there. How Tom Fallon was ignorant of these facts and ignorant of what the Reid technique does is completely mind-blowing. And there he goes. Jack 61.
I don't believe that. I believe he knows, and he twisted it to benefit himself so he could sell a story. That's what I believe. He's a smart guy.
Oh,
Fallon
very
is-
smart.
He knows. He certainly knows Wisconsin law, and probably law in other states as well. He's a very crafty and in my opinion, a very shady type lawyer that will find ways to, how do we say, circumvent legal statutes and so forth. That's what I see. But very intelligent guy. I can't believe he doesn't know.
Thank you, Jack. As well, one of the individuals who constantly complained and was always asking for judge, I don't agree with that, was Tom Fallon. Always putting up legal arguments with the judge, with the defense attorneys, objections was Tom Fallon. Kratz too, but the majority was done by Fallon. Oh, this particular case, you can't use this. And so he knew This was his playground. Absolutely his playground. Now you think of what was at stake here. If the jury found Brendan Dassey not guilty, then things are going to potentially look really nasty for the state. How the hell can they find Stephen guilty and Brendan Dassey not guilty? The two of them were together, right, guys? They were together.
Yep.
Right? So in Stephen's case, you have this forensic evidence, which, in my opinion, I believe was planted. With Brendan, there's nothing that ties him to the crime except his words, right? So Jack 61, if we can have a look at the next slide, please.
The video.
The video. Now, what I did, I deliberately just sped it up a little bit, so he's talking a little bit quicker, in the hope that we don't get a strike because of the music in the background. Let's pray we don't get taken off the air, Jack 61.
Yeah.
So
No, I don't think so.
okay, so this is a gentleman from the Innocence Project talking about false confessions. Do we have to mute Jack 61 or we're all good?
You shouldn't have to.
Okay, awesome.
All right, I'm going to put it on the stage. Here we go.
Awesome.
Tactic in particular
Only a
that
short
puts them
one.
at risk for that to happen is lying about evidence. In the United States, police are allowed to outright lie. They're allowed to say to a suspect, we had DNA found on the victim and we tested it and it's yours. Or we found hair within the victim's grasp. We tested it. That was your hair. Or we found the victim's blood on your pillow. Or that polygraph that you agreed to take, you failed it. Now, if you take somebody who's vulnerable to manipulation and their grasp on reality is starting to weaken and you outright lie about the evidence, you can shake in their view of reality. So when you look at confession evidence, you have to ask yourself what risk factors were present in the person that made him vulnerable, what interrogation tactics were used that would make anybody vulnerable, and there's a good 100+ years of psychology research showing that when you lie to people about reality, when you misrepresent reality, you can produce profound changes in people's visual perceptions, beliefs, autobiographical memories. The problem is 95% of false confessions contain accurate details about the crime that were not in the public domain. When you have a conversation with somebody, when you interrogate somebody, as part of that process of exchange, you're not just eliciting information, you're communicating information. So if a suspect is broken down to the point where the suspect believes it's in his best interest to confess, he probably has received through the process of interrogation enough facts to make that confession credible. I defy any prosecutor or judge or jury or appeals court to get past that statement. It's almost not possible. I've looked at confessions that have proved to be false before I knew they were false, and I believed them.
Damn.
Now, there it is in black and white. You just described Brendan Dassey, correct?
Yep.
To a T.
To the T. Absolutely.
To a T. Now,
Yep.
now, these guys can pick it up, right? How come Fassbender, Wiegert, the judges, Fallon, didn't pick it up, failed to pick it up, when it's obvious that when you have a vulnerable kid like Brendan Dassey and you keep on telling and lying to him and saying, we are in a superior position, we know what happened, we already know, we just want you to say things. And when Brendan tells his version of events, they say, no, you're lying.
You're lying.
Oh,
You're a liar.
You're lying. Oh, now we believe you, right? And just to show you, unless anyone's got any comments, if we have a look at the next slide, Jack 61, slide 59A3, he was examined by Robert Gordon, right? He was examined by Robert Gordon. Katie, would you like to read out what Robert Gordon said about Brendan Dassey?
Okay. In summary, the present interview results, test results, and review of collateral data show that Brendan is somewhat intellectually limited, passive, anxious, avoidant, and reserved. If he is presented with leading questions during an interview and or presented with interrogative pressure, his personality, as shown by interview data, behavior during the police interview and interview by the present psychologist, research regarding adolescent and suggestibility, and current test data is very susceptible to suggestibility. If you have any questions regarding the present evaluation, feel free to contact me, Robert H. Gordon, licensed psychologist. Well, I screwed that up. Thanks.
No, not at all. Not at all. But the amazing thing is here, guys, the psychologist examined Brendan and said, no, this kid is highly suggestible. And they completely ignored it. What do you think, guys?
They did, and remember, he was on the stand for hours.
Yes.
It is
Was it him
so evident.
or Leo, or was it Leo?
Gordon was on the stand as well. Not sure how long Leo was, but yeah, they ignored him.
Absolutely.
And you
they
know,
did.
I saw a Steve Drizzen tweet, I think it was yesterday, maybe, where
Yes.
he was talking about the Reid technique and the Reid Foundation, or whatever they call themselves, have fallen back on lying to get a confession and say, no, you shouldn't do that now.
Now,
After 50 years.
yeah, now,
Yep.
yep, correct. And you can see from the interview that that picture there with Brendan with his mum. He said, they got to my head, right? And remember Jack 61 when the Fassbender and we got rammed back in super quick.
They couldn't get in the room fast enough. They damn near tore the door off the hinges because they knew he was gonna
Recant.
he's gonna recant his words to his mom right there on the spot. And she even asked him, "What did you guys do to him? What did you or say to him?"
Yep. And Wiggy goes, "Oh, we've been doing this a long time, Barb. We know what we're doing."
I want to punch him.
Yeah, get in line.
It's an absolute shocker. Now, we've got a couple of more slides. To my absolute horror, Brendan Dassey is not unique. This case is not unique. There's one which is just as bad, if not worse. And this happened years ago to two guys, Matthew Livers and Nicholas Samson, their cousins. And they were found guilty of a double murder, murdering, I think there was their auntie and uncle, shooting them both in the head with shotguns. And Matthew Livers was the one that was arrested, and he was interrogated for many, many hours, and he completely denied being involved. The investigator said, no, you're lying. You killed your auntie and uncle, cold blood, you blew their heads off. They were both shot at close range with a pump action shotgun. Goes, no, I'm innocent. After, I think, 11 hours of interrogation using the Reid technique, he finally admitted to a double murder. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there, Jack 61.
No, just to add to your story, he was pretty low IQ as well.
Yes. He is an older version of Brendan Dassey. Low IQ, introvert, shy, very suggestible. But the investigators had a trick up their sleeve. They said, we notice the gunshot, the blood spatter pattern indicated that you had a co-defend, someone with you.
That's right.
And he goes, no. And, oh, no. The way the blood was spattered on the wall, you had somebody with you. Who was it? And he dobbed in his cousin. He goes, yeah, it was my cousin, Nick Samson. The incredible thing is, both of them got arrested. Both of them were facing life imprisonment. And I think Nick was going to be placed on death row. Is that correct, Jack 61? I think one of them.
I think that's right.
Was facing the death penalty.
Yeah.
Now, the bizarre thing is, both of them had alibis. They were in bed sleeping with their partners at the time, right? And both of them were nowhere near where their aunt and auntie was, right? Uncle and auntie was. But here's where it gets really bizarre. Jack 61, can we have a look at the next slide? This guy here, right? David Kofod. He's the top crime scene guru. He can solve crimes that nobody else can. And now you could understand why he was able to solve crimes that nobody else could. What he did was he found out that a group of paper delivery people saw a tan-colored car drive past them really, really quick. And so their cousin happened to own a similar type of vehicle. And so David Cofford went inside the vehicle, searched it from top to bottom. Now, remember, he's a crime scene guru. He checked the entire car, found nothing.
After it had already been searched, I believe.
He searched
Absolutely.
It. Yep.
No, it had
Well-
been searched by others prior to
Yeah,
him.
other techs had
Wow. Yeah.
previously. That's right. Previously searched it and found jack shit.
Clean. The investigators went up to him and said, "Can you please check it again?" And in the documentary, he goes, "I don't give a stuff about what a witness says. I need physical proof of their involvement in a crime." Right, Jack 61? He goes, "I don't
That's
care
right.
what people say in a confession. I want hard physical evidence."
That's right.
He went inside and he went underneath the steering wheel, the drive shaft of the car. He found one drop of blood that nobody else found. He tested it and it came up positive. I think he used phenolphthalein, came up positive for blood. They did a DNA extraction, and guess whose blood it was? It was from one of the victims.
That's right.
Think about this. It was the male victim, Stock, I believe, Wayne Stock. How in the hell did his blood, which was in his farmhouse in the top bedroom, end up inside the cousin's car? And guess what? It was planted
He
by
got caught.
Cofford. He got caught. So this notion that you can't plant coagulated blood is bullshit. He did it. He did it.
He did.
So
And this guy, just to fill in a little bit more of the story about this guy, Doc knows this. That county where he worked, they gave him whatever the hell he wanted.
whatever he wanted.
They made him a new lab and just really blowed this guy up like big time.
Yep. And he actually was, I think, Mr. Universe or Mr. America twice. Very vain. Very vain. But people respected him and were scared of him until everyone ratted on him. So he was able to solve all of these crimes. Why? Because he planted forensic evidence. And it looks like he's done it in multiple cases where you just needed that little bit of forensic evidence to cinch the case. Here's where it gets real nasty. They caught the actual murderers. They were young teenagers from Wisconsin on a crime spree. To this day, the two people that got caught and are in prison for life said, "We did it by ourselves. Samson, Matt Livers, we don't even know who they are." The investigator still believes in the guilt of Matt and Nicholas. The investigator cannot admit that they were coerced in a confession. He can't let it go. What do you think Fassbender and Uyghur are doing?
Same thing. They won't let it go.
They won't let it go. Even when the convicted murderers admitted, yeah, it was just us two. We were really there. We were there for robbery, but things got out of hand. And
They tried hard to tie those two to the other two. They tried hard investigating and interrogating the girl.
Yes, I did.
The guy to try and say they met him at a bar, and they really tried hard to do that.
Correct. 100% correct. And it goes to show that investigators have investigative bias and tunnel vision, because that's the plan that they went with. and they were going to stick with that no matter what. And so I think both boys got awarded over $5 million, but they were lucky. They only spent 7 months in prison. Brendan has been sitting in there for 18 years. I think Stephen 19 or something like that. Imagine if they are truly both innocent. It's horrendous.
Yep. And, and there's another piece to this case. There was a wedding ring found that
Yes.
the boy that did the crime with the girl, she had on her finger and it had slipped off. And that one investigator would not let it go, and he ran it down. It was
Correct.
quite amazing, actually.
Yep, they found the actual
Right.
owner of the ring, and they
Yeah.
found a drug paraphernalia.
It was engraved.
Correct,
It was
Correct.
engraved.
Done in a jewelry
Correct.
store in Wisconsin somewhere.
correct.
I think.
And,
Yeah.
Yep, and I think the show's on Netflix. If you ever get the chance to check it out, this should be your reference case because it pattern matches what happened in the murder of Teresa Halbach. The investigators came up with an idea and won't let it go. They will not, even though the evidence pointed to 2 other individuals who absolutely admitted to the crime, as Susan said, no. All 4 were involved.
And
Right.
Ferak wrote a book about it as well.
And not to forget the corruption in the labs that
Yes.
has come out in this country all over the
Oh, my
place.
God.
It's
It's
correct.
terrible.
Correct. Jack 61 is correct. John Ferak wrote a book. It's called Bloody Lies, a CSI scandal in the heartland. Read it. And now you'll understand why someone like John Ferak and also Kathleen Zorner are hard on this case here, the Stephen Avery, Brendan Dassey case, the murder of Teresa Halbach, because it's been done before. The blueprint is right in this case. It is scary and horrendous. If you haven't checked it out, check it. This guy's the number 1 forensic guru, the best of the best. He was planting evidence, and he planted blood too. He had no problems planting blood. All right.
He also went to prison for it
2 years. He should have done more.
for way too short a time. Yeah.
Way too short. And let me just go. I just want to go a couple of more slides. I just want to go through the insanity of all of this, right, regarding Brendan Dassey. Now, Magistrate Judge William Duffin, he saw the confession from what it was. It was garbage. He goes, you can't use this. This is absolute garbage. Either release him or try him again, but you can't use this confession. Well, if you can't use the confession, there's nothing else because there's no forensic evidence. So it went to the en banc court because Brad Schimmel was not happy with the judge's decision. So I went to the en banc court. I think there were the 3 judges. Brendan Dassey won, or his attorneys won, 2-1, right? 2-1. No. Brad Schimmel was not happy with that. No way. So I went to the full en banc court, all 7. Brendan Dassey, unfortunately, lost 4-3. Now, this is what Judge Angie's saying. Oh, well, it's affirmed, which meant that the confession was given voluntarily, blah, blah, blah. And that's why the judge used it. But the judge should have realized that Brendan should have been released a long time ago, but it was because of Brad Schimmel always on the tail of the assessment. Brad Schimmel didn't let it go until he got the answer that he wanted. And in the end, Brendan lost 4-3. It wasn't 7-0. And it's disturbing. Remember, guys, Jack 61, what one of the female judges told Laura Nyrider, you must lose.
Yep, she did.
That en banc was
En banc.
purely political move.
Yes.
Had nothing to do with the death of Teresa Halbach
And
No.
Schimmel knew it, and he used it.
or
No.
Brendan's.
Yep. So in a way, Susan, would you agree? Brendan Dassey is a political prisoner of the political system.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
yep. So the reason why the judge said to Laura Nora, and she did a great job. right? A lot of people have been critical of Laura. No. Even if Steve Drizzen went up against the judges, it would have been the same outcome, because they didn't want to change the Reid technique. Because the judge said to her, "You want us to change the law, do you? We can't change the law. You must lose."
Well, she put the bar so high. It's sort of like what Sakavich did. She put the bar so high. There's no winning. You can't, and that's not what Laura Nyrider was trying to do anyway. But she flopped it and put her in a place that she's like, no, I'm not.
Yep.
No.
Correct. So in a way, Luke, I think it was Luke Berg, all he had to do was parrot the state's narrative.
That's right.
No matter how much crap he received from the judges, the dissenting judges, he didn't care. He just said, "Oh well, this is what Brendan said. Let's go for it." But it's because they wanted to change the process, i.e., the interrogation technique, that the Reid technique can solicit a false confession. The judge is going, "Holy shit, if we agree, then we're going to have thousands and thousands of people saying, 'Hey, I was given the Reid technique. I want a new trial.'" So they shut the lid. Correct? And Brendan paid the price.
That's right.
Brendan paid the price. Susan.
I would bet money that same judge has used that exact same argument in other cases.
Yes.
Just to get past them.
Yes. 100% correct.
Because she turned Laura's intent around completely.
Yes. In actual fact, if we look at the next slide, Jack 61, this is what one of the judges actually said. Well, just Susan, do you see that slide?
Yes, but I have a chip in my mouth, Doc.
Oh, lucky you. Lucky you. I don't recall. Do you see the slide?
I do.
Yep. Would you like to read? This is what one of the judges actually said about the outcome.
En banc dissenting opinion written by Chief Judge Wood. When the suspect is a minor, courts must review the confession and record with special care. Dassey was fed the fact that Avery went under the RAV4 hood. Dassey was fed that she was shot in the garage. EDPA does not paralyze us in the face of a clear constitutional violation. Without this involuntary and highly unreliable confession, the case against Dassey was almost non-existent.
You couldn't have put it any more simpler than that, right? There was no forensic evidence. There was no physical evidence that Brendan Dassey was involved, but they couldn't turn it around. They couldn't admit the mistake, right? And you saw what happened with Matt Livers and his cousin, Nick Samson. The investigators still believed in their guilt, even though there was no physical evidence. They had alibi witnesses. They can't let it go. Jack 61, is your country doomed to this complete bullshit? Because from the outside looking in, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
I hope not. I hope, cooler heads can prevail, smarter people can prevail, and reasonable efforts to obtain a statement from someone takes over. Truth in law enforcement. Even when you have a kid like Brendan Dassey that's clearly not a hardened criminal, you don't go at him like he is.
Yes.
And that's what they did. And
yes,
he's off lost in the woods looking around. He's completely alone. You think about being 16-year-old and a kid, even a relatively smart kid, they're going to feel that pressure. There's just no way around it. So I hope, Doc, that these kinds of things change, or a child has representation in the room. Cops don't do what these cops in Nebraska did, these cops in Wisconsin did. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. You got to get the statement, but verify. You got to find something to back that statement up.
Back it up.
Otherwise, it's just complete bullshit.
Yeah. It's really, really disheartening and a big issue. But we have a look at the next one.
Sorry, Doc. Any
No.
honest detective will tell you that.
Correct.
Got to
The-
verify.
Correct. You must verify. 100% correct. But the boogeyman behind all of this was Brad Schimmel, right? And let me read some of his statements that he said, because he was very, very unhappy, right, with the outcome. He goes, the panel is given to you randomly, and you don't know what you're going to get. So in other words, he doesn't even trust his own judges on a panel to make a decision, right? So the panel is well, if you don't trust the judges, why have the system in the first place? You got to judge the umpire's decision or you don't, right? You either have the system or you don't.
Well, Doc, just to interrupt, and I apologize.
No.
And I railed when we went over this the last couple of times. I railed about it. If you're not going to trust the 3-panel judge system, do away with it, and you take every case through the en banc. You don't get a second chance. I don't give a damn which side. It doesn't matter. If you don't trust them, you don't use them. No second chances.
100% correct. But look at this, right? He goes, we think the judge got it very wrong. Wrong on the, remember what he said? Wrong on the law, wrong on the facts. This is Judge Duffin. It's Judge Duffin, right?
Yeah, he spent a year studying the case. He didn't get it wrong.
No. But according to Brad Schimmel, Judge Duffin got it wrong on the law, wrong on the facts. But this is really what grinds my gears. It's the old fallback default argument. I'll quote what he said. Hopefully, we'll get some finality soon for Teresa Halbach's family. It's the same adage all the time. That's exactly what the judge is saying now to Kathleen Zellner. Go away, leave it alone. You've had your chance. You've constantly failed. Go away.
Yeah, and they do. We've talked to other lawyers, and they are looking for finality, and I understand that. At the same time, every time this guy talked, he had to bring up the Halbach family.
Yes,
I understand that too, and their pain. I do personally.
Yes.
But if you have a really questionable case, to me, I truly believe that they're wondering and just not public about it. That they have to be. I just can't see it otherwise. Maybe I'm wrong.
Correct. But he also went one step further. Oh, sorry, Susan.
I was just going to say it's an unjust conviction.
Yep.
Yes, but he also went one step further, right? Have a look at the comment he made outside the courtroom or the en banc courtroom, right? Let's have a look at the next slide. Now, Susan, do you see the next slide or do you have a chip in your mouth still?
I just put another chip in.
Oh, God damn it. All right. Katie, would you like to read this? So this is what Brad Schimmel said after the court hearing.
What makes my skin crawl is knowing the things that happened to Teresa Halbach. Not that this young man is uncomfortable talking about it, reliving it. Teresa's family relives this every day.
There we go. It's the old default. Let's invoke the family again at Jack 61.
That's exactly that's what I was going to say, Doc. Exactly. It's every time he opened his mouth.
Yep. Now, the same type of arguments would have been used when Stephen was put in prison for the wrongful conviction of his sexual assault on Penny Bernstein. The same arguments would have been made. You got to think about Penny. You got to think about her family. And Kaseric, correct me if I'm wrong, he threatened a gentleman who went to go and see the Bernsteins at their candy store and said, look, I don't think this was done by Stephen. I think this was done by somebody else. Penny phoned up Kaseric. Kaseric found out who this person was and threatened him with arrest. Okay? Because the finality of the decision. You can't question the decision. This is final. Go away. Jack 61.
That's exactly right. They're looking for finality. They don't want to deal with it anymore. We've got our guy. Get the hell away from us. Move on.
Yep.
Or I'm
Yep.
going to arrest your ass.
Yep, 100% correct. So people who even made suggestions that it could have been somebody else were threatened with arrest. Now have a look what Brad Schimmel had to protect. If we look at the next slide, please. And this is why I believe that Brad Schimmel was so insistent that Brendan remained in prison, is because he's got to protect his department, right? He's got to defend and protect the Wisconsin Department of Justice. And have a look who's in there. Over 100 lawyers, over 100 special agents, 3 different crime labs, and the officer of the Office of the Solicitor General. That's a huge amount of people to look after. That's a huge department that he's in charge of. Imagine the blowback on him and his department if Brendan walks. Guys, any comments?
That's the
Well, it's
whole
like,
reason they fight so hard. It's
be like
all political.
Yep, it'd
Yep.
be like rolling a suitcase nuclear bomb into the AG's office.
Yep. And that explains why Brad Schimmel was so insistent that in this particular case, Brendan could not be released, because it will reflect badly on his Wisconsin Department of Justice. But he's not the only one. The other person who's got a lot to lose is, who do you think? Who's got a lot to lose face in this particular case? Anyone want to name him?
I do.
In fact, Susan, have you finished your chip?
Yeah.
Would you like to read the next slide, please? The other person who's got a lot to lose and who suddenly has come back on Twitter is Mr. Kratz. And this is what Mr. Kratz wrote in his book. He's got a lot to lose if Brendan walks as well. Susan, would you like to read this one out?
But I lose no sleep over my prosecution of Brendan Dassey. I was a prosecutor with a dead young woman and her surviving family for which to pursue justice. If the state of Wisconsin loses that appeal and Brendan shuffles out of prison, I wonder how he will have changed, what the rest of his life will be like. Will history repeat itself in Manitowoc County? How long will it be before a second member of the Avery clan shows up in civil court to file a multi-million-dollar lawsuit alleging wrongful conviction or police misconduct? Will he follow Uncle Stevie's lead again? Where will he place the blame for his misfortune? Will he take the life of another in retaliation? If he does, I'm certain the making a murderer cameras will return to Wisconsin to capture the offering.
Does anyone want to make any comments on that?
For fuck's sake.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I think history will repeat itself in Manitowoc County over and over again. Oh my God.
He was so terrified that if Brendan walked, look what he said. He potentially thought that Brendan Dassey was going to kill again. He never killed in the first place, but he was going to kill again. So it's better to keep him in prison just in case, which is the argument that the law enforcement officers, I remember them saying, oh, maybe it would have been better if Stephen had remained in prison because Teresa Hallbach could be alive. Kratz repeated the same sentiment in that statement. Guys, any comments?
I mean,
you know,
he's like saying,
it's
is
almost,
he gonna? Sorry, Jack. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's almost laughable. Go ahead, Susan.
I mean, he's saying, is he gonna file a multi-million-dollar lawsuit like his uncle did,
Yep.
and then take the life of another in retaliation just before he's about to get his $1 million?
Yep. Yep. But look what else he feared. That man were going to come back and do
Making
another
murder.
documentary. Correct.
So ridiculous. Oh my God, this man.
Yep. Correct. Katie, did you have a comment?
No, I'm good.
All right, guys. We've got a few more slides. So now we're going to dovetail back into the book. And did I hear that correct? Tom Baresh is in our chat. Is he still in our chat?
I'm not sure if he's still there or not. Let's see.
I haven't seen him
hold-
comment recently.
Hold on, I'll check.
Okay. Is that the Tom Baresh that we're talking about now?
Says it is.
Wow. Interesting.
Nope, he's not showing up in the @
Okay.
sign.
Okay. All right. So who would like to read this out? So now we're dovetailing back into the book, and Kathleen Zona is presenting another affidavit, this time of Tom Baresh. Who would like to read this one out?
If nobody wants to, Doc, I will.
Thank you, Jack61.
All right. On May 26, 2023, Zellner submitted another affidavit for Avery's appeal from someone who previously never stepped forward. Zellner notified Wisconsin judiciary system she just became aware of Tom Baresh on May 10, 2023. His observations concern Halbach's RAV4 during the late night hours of Friday, November 4, 2005, or early morning hours of Saturday, November 5, 2005. Quote, Mr. Thomas Baresh corroborates the previously filed affidavit of Thomas Swinsky that Bobby Dassey was driving the RAV4 vehicle of Teresa Halbach on Friday night, November 4, 2005, or early Saturday morning after her disappearance on October 31, 2005, Zellner declared. According to the May 24, 2023 affidavit, Tom Baresh indicated that back in 2005, he worked as a self-employed repossession agent, repo man. He remembered that sometime before 2 a.m. on Saturday, November 5, 2005, Baresh was driving his tow truck to repossess a vehicle in rural Manitowoc County near the tiny town of Larrabee. He was in the area of State Highway 147 and County Road Q in Manitowoc County. Quote, I noticed the vehicle in the parking ride on highways 147 and 43 that had just struck a deer and had a broken headlight, Baresh remarked. End quote. I gave the driver a roll of duct tape to repair the car. After that, I was driving down Highway 147 and made a wrong turn to go south on County Road Q. After I realized my mistake, I turned around and was heading back north. As I was heading back north, I noticed a RAV4 driving south on County Road Q. The RAV4 turned left off County Road Q after it passed me. I noticed the RAV4 because it was unusual to see any other cars out on the road at that time of night. As for his tow truck, Baresh recalled it had a bright illuminating lights. The bright lights illuminated the oncoming RAV4 that allowed Baresh to see people inside the vehicle as it passed him. On that particular night, Baresh recalled he had another helper with him inside his tow truck who also saw the oncoming RAV4. The man's name was Mike, and Mike has since died. Anyway, Baresh remembered that in either 2006 or 2007, he was watching the television news coverage for Avery's murder trial, and that's when he noticed Bobby Dassey in the courtroom. Baresh remembered how he had seen Bobby Dassey driving the RAV4 during the late night hours of 2005.
All right. Now, I know that a lot of people are going to try and debunk Thomas Baresh, as they will with Tom Sawinski, but is his affidavit, it's regarded as the truth. Are you concerned, if you're the state, are you concerned by Tom Swinsky and Tom Baresh's affidavits? Jack 61.
Well, you have to be, because, as you said, an affidavit is considered the truth until it's proven not to be reliable. And so, a lot of people in the community, the advocates for the state, have tried to do that for many, many months now.
Yes.
So, but that, I don't consider it one way or the other personally, other than, hey, these guys have put themselves out there, and I have to consider this as a true statement until proven otherwise. I'm not saying Bobby did shit. I'm not saying anything like that at all. I'm just saying what these guys have put out there. If we're going to follow the rule of law, it has to be considered as true.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, J61. Susan, what about yourself? Would you be concerned if you're the state?
Well, I would really like to see an evidentiary hearing with both of them on the stand. But I also think there's a possibility of misidentification,
Yes.
eyewitness misidentification.
Yep.
Could have been the RAV4. And, Bobby is not very distinctive when it comes to guys his age. If he had some real distinct features or something,
Agree.
it would be easier to identify him. That doesn't mean I don't think they, that they didn't possibly see Bobby. I just think that, they could have seen the RAV, but it could have been someone else.
Yep. Excellent point.
Do I believe their stories? I'd like to see an evidentiary hearing. I'm inclined to.
Okay.
With their affidavits, they're swearing.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Interesting. Thank you, Susan. Katie, what about yourself?
Hey, I just ditto what Susan just said. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay. So put it in front of a judge, check out the veracity of their statements, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you? I don't recall. If you're the state, would you be concerned?
Yes, I concur with Stephen, or with the other three, that it should be treated as true, and we should have an evidentiary hearing and decide after that.
Excellent. At the end of the day, I agree with Susan. It could well be a case of mistaken identity.
Yep.
But when you distill it down, you have two different individuals spotting potentially the victim's vehicle off the property, and Sawinski saw the victim's vehicle allegedly being pushed onto the property. So when you distill it right down to the basics, the state's case is that Teresa nor her RAV4 ever left the property. If what Baresh and Sawinski are saying is true and correct, that means that two individuals were in control of the victim's vehicle. Wasn't Stephen, wasn't Brendan. That's a huge, huge concern. Jack 61.
Yeah, I think until they have, to me, there's just no way to untangle it until you have an evidentiary hearing. Put these people on the stand, put it in their face, and I don't know any other way to make it work. And in reality, Doc, we have 3 affidavits. We can't forget about Ramlo.
Ramlo as well, correct. And there were others as well that have seen the RAV4 off the property. He's not. These 3 are not the only ones. There are more.
No, that's right.
Right. And the argument by Judge Angela Sukowitz was, I don't care. Potentially Bobby could, but don't worry, it's going to get worse. Potentially Bobby was actually helping Stephen and his brother by putting on the evidence onto the property. And you're thinking, the judge can't be thinking straight. Surely not. Right. But if we have a look at the next slide, do you have 62B? This is why it's so damaging. So you could do a Google Earth, have a look where Baresh and Sawinski noticed the RAV4, right? If you just blow up the where Baresh is up on the top, right? That's he was on Highway 147 and he saw the RAV turn down County Highway Q, right? So it's actually heading potentially towards the Avery salvage yard, but from the back way. Remember, County Highway Q.
Or Cuss Road. Yeah.
Yes, or Cuss Road, correct. Remember, on County Highway Q in Redon's Quarry, that's where Travis Crowell had smelt something that he never smelt before on the night of October the 31st. And we showed that the wind was not blowing in that direction. So if he had witnessed or smelt a cremation event, it was actually very close to where he was, right? So Baresh notices two individuals in a RAV4, early hours of the morning. Have a look at where Sawinski was. Sawinski was delivering the newspaper down at the end of Avery Road. And that's where he encountered two people pushing the RAV4 onto the Avery salvage yard. When you take into Baresh and Sawinski, the whole thing works. They might have got their times wrong, but it actually complements each other because it meant that two witnesses who I don't think they know each other saw two individuals in possession of what appeared to be a Toyota RAV4. There's no way that anyone should have had their hands or been inside that RAV4. So that's why Kathleen Zellner is saying, all right, let's test this. Let's check for touch DNA. Let's see who was actually in the RAV. Was it Brendan? Was it Stephen? Or was it a third party? Right? And when you remember what Tom Sawinski said, goes, I saw a shirtless Bobby Dassey. Well, if he's in the driver's seat or whoever got into the driver's seat, you're going to potentially shed skin cells, which means that potentially you've left your DNA there. If you're pushing the RAV, check it. Is there touch DNA, right? So when you look at this in total and Ramlo, the anecdotal evidence is strong. It suggests the RAV4 was off the Avery salvage yard, which complements exactly what Stephen said. I saw it turn left on Highway 147 heading towards Larrabee, which then factors in what John LeQuern said. I saw a mid-sized green SUV drive past me, right? So when you look at all these points, it's strong evidence that suggests that what Stephen said was the truth. He actually saw Teresa leave. The state is saying, bullshit, she never left, right? So that's why this argument presenting Sawinski and Baresh, unless both of them are lying, it's pretty powerful evidence in my opinion. Guys, do we have any questions?
There's been several more that I've highlighted, Doc, but we can get to them when we finish up here.
Yep. Now, again, I want to echo, we're not blaming Bobby for doing anything. We weren't.
Absolutely not.
We weren't there. What we're presenting is the official documents and what witnesses have said. It'll be remiss of us if we don't mention that. But we're not blaming Bobby for anything. As Susan said, one of the worst forms of identification is eyewitness identification.
It's terrible. We know that. It's terrible.
Yeah. It's 100. And Susan is correct. Many youths of that age, they look very, very similar. Unless you had a distinguishing feature like a hair color, facial hair, or a tattoo or something like that, it's very, very hard to be discriminatory. I agree. But at the end of the day, if Kathleen Zellner is permitted the number plates, the RAV4, the blinker light, potentially it can clear everybody. Or it can inculpate Brendan and Stephen. That's the risk that they're willing to take. I know that Stephen is.
Yeah,
Jackson,
Brenda or Steven said years ago, test everything. I want you to test everything. He's not holding back. You know,
correct. And when the investigator spoke to Bobby, I said, "Are we going to find your DNA in that RAV?" He goes, "No, I was nowhere near it." So hence, if he never was in the RAV, if he wasn't pushing the RAV, he's got nothing to fear. But two people were.
you know, it's concerning. You know, you brought up somebody pushing it, and of course, the spare tire cover being on back, and we were
Yes.
taking possession of that spare tire cover for a number of days. We don't really know how long because he
Yes.
didn't report anything.
Yes.
I'm really leery. It's so shady that he would have taken that piece of evidence that clearly had it had outline of fingerprints on it.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
fingerprint. Correct.
it could have, and there could have been as close as it was to everything else that was on that cargo door. A23, the
23.
inside of that cargo door had Teresa's blood. There could have
Yes.
been biological evidence on that spare tire cover that. And
Right.
you know, he could have brought back any spare tire cover for all I know because he didn't report anything.
Correct.
It really bothers me. It's really shady too.
But what people may not be aware is when you put your fingerprints down, even if your fingerprints are smeared, you may leave skin cells. So that's that's an obvious place to test for touch DNA. So someone had their hands on the back wheel, and that's a perfect place if you're going to push a vehicle, right? Place your hands on the spare tire cover and push it on the spare tire.
And they're putting a lot of pressure on there, you know, because it's heavy as hell. You know, just only two people pushing. It's a small car, but still, they're going to be pushing. There's going to be a lot of pressure in those areas.
Are 100% correct. All right, guys, we've got a few more slides. Let's get them done. Who would like to read this? So this is continuing Tom Baresh. Who would like to continue this? Susan or Katie? Anybody?
Go for it, Kate.
Let's go for it.
In his 2023 affidavit, Baresh acknowledged he was no saint. He had his share of ups and downs in life, and in November 2006, he found himself in Green Bay at the Brown County Jail facing a domestic violence charge. Then, in February 2007, he was back in jail accused of bail jumping. During the time I was incarcerated, I told a Brown County detective that I had information about the Halbach murder, but was ignored and told that I was already in enough trouble and to shut up, Baresh noted. To this day, Baresh said he cannot identify the passenger seated inside the RAV4 following Halbach's disappearance, but I am 100% sure it was not Stephen Avery, he insisted. In 2017 and 2018, I told my brother, Ron, about my observation of the RAV4 back in 2005. I do not know any of the Avery or Dassey family members personally, but I may have towed vehicles at the Avery salvage yard on a few occasions. I believe I have encountered Stephen Avery on one occasion at a local McDonald's, but did not converse with him. Lastly, Baresh was asked by Zellner's associates whether he knew a man named Mike Osmundson. I do not know Mike Osmundson, Baresh declared. Nothing has been promised or given to me in exchange for this affidavit.
Okay. So, taken together, I think there's a very, very powerful argument that the RAV4, very likely Teresa's RAV4, because no other RAV4 was found on the property apart from Teresa's. Teresa's vehicle was in the possession of two people, and we don't know who they were, even though Tom Sawinski said, look, and also Baresh said, I saw Bobby Dassey. It could have been a case of mistaken identity or the fact that they saw Mam and something got triggered in their mind. Oh, yeah, it was him, right? But at the end of the day, and I think Susan will agree, put it in front of a judge, test it out, check their veracity out, and that's it. End all the crap, put it in front of a judge, test it. Are they lying? Are they mistaken? Or what they're saying, is it true? All right, guys, do we have any comments?
Yeah, there's been some comments and question or two, but I've got them highlighted.
Okay, awesome. We've got one more slide to go, and that's it. That'll be our podcast for today. Shall I read this one out?
Go for it now.
Yep. Okay. In the end, Judge Sukowicz was not persuaded to give much weight to Beresh's affidavit either. Page 29. Once again, assuming for the purposes of this motion that the facts in the Beresh affidavit were true, the facts do not directly link Bobby Dassey with the murder of Teresa Halbach. The affidavit asserts that 2 people were in the car when it was seen driving down the road. While Mr. Beresh states that he can conclusively identify Bobby Dassey in the car, he cannot identify the other individual in the car other than that to eliminate the person being the defendant. Once again, the affidavit links Bobby Dassey to being in possession of the RAV4 after the homicide took place. There is nothing in the affidavit that establishes that Bobby Dassey had possession or conclusive possession of the vehicle prior to that time. The affiant states that a second individual was in the car at the time that he saw it driving down the road. The affidavit does not establish that Bobby was the individual who was in possession of the key to the car or the car itself prior to that night. The affidavit only, taken as true, establishes that Bobby was in possession of the car on November the 4th or the 5th. And that's it. So the judge is saying they can't identify the second individual. And don't worry, next podcast we'll go into what that means. But the judge seems to be okay that Bobby is in possession of Teresa's RAV4 because there's no proof that he was in possession prior to November the 4th or the 5th. Jack 61.
Or that he or whoever, this could be whoever. It doesn't have to be Bobby. But it's just a mere fact of somebody having possession, well, if we go with a misidentification of that vehicle after she was reported missing. But because, he didn't have the, nobody saw him with the key or the electronics, it don't matter. It's fine.
But notice what, sorry, Susan.
Sorry, there's absolutely zero proof also of exactly when Teresa was killed.
You read my mind because it said after the homicide took place.
There's no proof. There is nothing to establish time of death. Date of
No,
death.
there's not.
That's right.
There's not. And in actual fact, Kratz used that argument, I remember, on some social media. Well, how do you know that Stephen killed her on the 31st?
He did use that. Yeah.
Yes, he did. He
Because
argued
he
that.
was asked for his alibi.
Correct. That's
When he
correct.
blushed when asked for an alibi.
He was talking to that comedian, that lady comedian.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting that he blushed.
Correct. So now we're going to be left in suspense because now it's the other individual that's going to be used as an argument against Kathleen Zellner. It's brilliant. But we'll do that next week. All right, guys. Well, that's the end of our podcast for today. Guys, do we have any comments or do we have some questions?
We have around 20 questions or so. I think we can get through part of these. We can get through these probably pretty quickly. So, who wants to help me? I'll pop them on screen. Susan or somebody, Kay, want to help read these out?
Sure.
Okay, here's the first one.
Who killed Teresa from Anthony Hills?
Thank God it's only a small question.
Yeah.
For me, I do not know.
Same
Whoever
here.
it is still running the streets.
I have my suspicions, but
Unless
I don't
they're
have
dead
proof.
or in prison for something else.
Yep. Okay. And this is a comment from Thomas Bresh. These are from earlier. I mean, I just tagged them as I saw them. So here's the next one.
Brush. Yes, I am the tow truck driver that saw Bobby Dassey. I was told my name was mentioned here. That was 1,000% him driving that RAV4, Dr. Silkman, without question. I still think that there's a possibility of misidentification, Thomas. It occurred. I saw where you said that during the trial, it came to mind again, which would have been a couple years later. And I think the power of suggestion of seeing somebody on the stand could have influenced your memory and who was behind that will. It's just it, and it's the reason why witness identification is not real accurate,
Right.
because our minds don't play
Reliable.
tricks with us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
You know,
I mean,
and
I
this is not-
believe that you believe that, but I do think there still is a possibility that you could be mistaken on who was driving that RAV.
Yeah, we've
I
seen
believe
it too
you
many
saw
times.
the RAV4. Yeah.
And this is no strike on, Mr. Baresh or Mr. Sawinski. It's not. It's just it's so we've seen it so many times in other cases, a misidentification. People swear that's who it was. But
Look
then
at
come to
Penny
find out.
Burnson.
Yes. But
She was certain it was Stephen.
correct. But
It was
she
up
was
close and personal.
correct. But she was guided in a way to make the wrong
Yes.
choice. But you're right. She was up close and personal with her attacker, who was Gregory Allen, and through the power of coercion and manipulation, she picked out Stephen. But to me, what I admire about Thomas's answer is his conviction that he definitely saw the RAV4 and someone driving it, whether it was Bobby or someone that looked like Bobby. That can be argued, but I admire the veracity of Thomas's assertion that, yep, I definitely saw that RAV and Bobby was driving it. That's why you test the steering wheel. You swab the steering wheel, you test it for touch DNA. Yep.
Very interesting, Thomas.
Yep. Thank you
is.
so much. And welcome to Foul Play.
Yep. And the next two are from Melly Hill. Susan, here's the first one.
Okay. She asks, doesn't everything have to be taken out of the car to crush the car? Like the
I think they mean
lines?
wheels. I think they mean wheels.
Probably, etc.
Uh,
There's a lot to dismantle.
Yeah. Normally, the normal procedure is they try and salvage as many of the components as possible. Things like the motor, the transmission, the exhaust system, anything that can be sold or melted down, they keep. So really, it's the body of the car that they want to crush, right? Because that way they can get money for scrap metal. But certainly, if the wheels are good, tires are good, brakes are good, you
Electronics, anything that they can get, because they can get more a lot of times out of spare parts.
100% correct. And here in Australia, and I'm sure in the US, if you've got a car and you want to buy a spare part, the obvious place that they go to is the salvage yards. If they're looking for a particular, say, brake lining or whatever rim, they go to a salvage. Instead of buying the brand new part, they get a recycled part. They're still in perfectly good condition. So they're not going to crush a car if they can make money, right? They'll recycle
And
the part.
also, you know, all the environmentally
Yes.
stuff, all the fluids and all of
You-
that. And the tire. You have to take the tires off. Yeah.
Yeah, correct. And that's why you saw next to the crusher, there was a big pile of tires and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So it's all part of the recycling process, correct?
That's right. And you know, you got a set of wheels off of a pretty nice set of wheels off of a car. Those can
Yeah.
be sold too. You know, that's another money maker.
Correct. Yep, correct.
Okay. All right. Next one from Millie.
Doesn't everything have to be taken? That's the same.
Yeah, that would.
Sounds far-fetched for Stephen to have planned to do this.
Yeah, correct.
I agree.
There's no way that he basically would have had to have told his family to keep away for a long period of time to dismantle it. And remember, these car parts are very, very heavy. You need an engine mount. You need hoists, lifts. It wouldn't have taken too long for Chuck or Earl or the father or anybody else to say, Stephen, mate, what are you doing? Why are you dismantling this car? This car's in new condition. What are you doing? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
Good question.
From Danny Burfan.
Danny says, did Bobby give his statement about seeing Teresa heading for Stevens? That could be a cause for a warrant. When we were talking about search warrants earlier. Well, you know, Stephen gave them permission to go in his trailer. So they didn't
Correct.
have to get a warrant that first day.
Correct.
Bobby's statements weren't until after they found the RAB.
That
They
is
didn't
correct.
talk to Bobby at all. So
Correct. Remember, we talked about there was sort of like tension very early on, that there was a bit of finger pointing going in both directions because Stephen told Jody. Remember, he said to Jody,
third,
"Oh yeah, no, I don't think I was the last one to see Teresa. It was Bobby." There you go.
but that was the second. Yeah, on Tuesday.
Correct. Yep, that's correct.
Mm.
Good question.
All right. Moving on. And this is more of a statement from Behind the Magic. Got a couple of them. Here's the first one.
At Barb. Currently, there is zero forensic evidence linking Bobby to a murder. So regardless of what is being said, it's not proof of murder. The point is, Brendan nor Stephen was seen with the RAB.
Correct. There's no
That's right.
forensic evidence pointing to Bobby Dassey.
No.
He is 100% innocent, presumed innocent, 100%.
I agree. Next one from Behind the Magic.
At Thomas Barash, when did you identify Bobby? Just curious.
I'm not sure
And
that I
think
caught an
he
answer.
answered.
Did
He
he?
answered that in the book. Well, in the book where we just read, where he
Oh, the
said
affidavit. Yeah.
he
Correct.
said, was it during a news cast?
I think so,
in
yes.
06? Was that the first time, or was it during the trial? No, he was in jail in 07, he said. I think he
Yep.
said it was in 06. He saw a news report about it or something and remembered that night. I don't think at that time he said it was Bobby, as I recall. But yeah, he remembered the event in 06, so before the trial.
And that
And
detective
then
told him to
during the
detective
trial-
keep his mouth shut.
During the trial, he was in jail and said, "Hey, I've got some information about that case," and they
Correct.
said, "Shut up." Yeah,
Correct. And that's why it's important to present Baresh, Sawinski in front of a judge,
yes,
Ramlo, sort it out. Where did you get the information from? Could you be mistaken? What did you see? Do it like that. Do it in front of a judge. Do it legally or legally.
Yep. All righty. Next question.
Anthony Hills, did Cleveland Auto Salvage have a crusher? Well, I don't know that anybody here would know that. I know the one that was at Avery's was a company that would bring it in there,
Nord.
Yes.
fresh cars,
Yes.
Nords, yeah, Norbs, and take it out. I mean, it didn't live there all the time, but I would imagine Cleveland would do the same thing
The hire
unless
'em.
they had their own.
Yeah, they get
Yeah.
rented out or whatever for however long, how many
Yep.
cars they're going to crush. And
And-
yeah, because the
I don't
buy
know
one's
about any
expensive.
of you, but I have no idea if they had one.
I would imagine they rented it just like every salvage yard, if at all.
Yeah, it's Norb's Auto Salvage.
Yeah.
You can see because it's got wheels, so it's transportable. And most salvage yards would tend to have a crusher because when they get the vehicles, they remove all the parts that they can potentially sell. And if the car is completely wrecked and they can't salvage any of the metal components from the car on the outside, they crush it and they bring it to the scrap metal and they get money from the scrap metal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
And I think probably Norb's, they probably don't rent it. Norb's probably leaves it there in order to, the Averys probably sell them all those cars. And just to make it easier for transport, they crush them right there.
On the
and then
spot.
take them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then move that crusher to different salvage yards, I would guess.
Yeah, it's mobile. Yep.
All righty. Next question.
Billy Hill asks, anyone else think it's strange that they were more fixed on finding the RAV than TH? Almost reaffirms the framed narrative.
It's very questionable.
Very
Yeah.
strange. Another thing I found really weird is when Fassbender arrived on the 5th, he got there about 2:30 in the afternoon, if I recall correctly, somewhere around there. And the car had been found. I mean, the cops were there by what, 11, a little after 11?
Yes. No, they're pretty quick.
So,
10 minutes
so
to
they'd
11, I
been
think, was
there-
the first one.
They'd been there for 3.5 hours with that RAV. Fassbender, the first thing he does when he gets there, he goes up and looks inside the RAV to see if Teresa's in there.
Yes.
It's that the dumbest thing you've ever heard.
Yes.
Yep.
Like nobody else had checked.
Right.
Yep.
It was
It's
the
just questionable
dumbest
during
statement.
the phone,
And they
the
even
Pam
put
phone
that
call.
in a report. I mean,
Yeah, during the Pam phone call, no one asked, is there any sign of Teresa? Is there any signs of struggle? Nothing about
Right.
Teresa at all.
right?
Yep. That was very strange.
Yep.
And
All
also,
right. Oh, go ahead.
before you continue, also, did you know that, well, I can't remember the date, but they did some more aerial surveillance from the air using a thermal camera.
6th and the 8th. That
They're
was the
looking-
DCI.
they're looking
November
for-
6th. Yep. November 6th and November 8th. And I've tried to get that footage and
Yep.
they denied it.
The interesting thing is that they found a burnt patch of land somewhere. They gave a GPS coordinate and it's off the Avery salvage yard. Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
Thermal camera. And they recorded it. It's on tape.
Yep. All righty. Next question. Thank you, Millie.
Thank you.
Hugh Fraser. Question. Can we please rename Occam's razor? Oh, what's Kelly's razor? So much more persuasive.
Sorry, I didn't read that one. I just saw the Q
Yeah.
and highlighted it. Moving on.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Anthony Hills. Is there a record for searching the blue trailer?
I
Yes.
think there is. I think
Yeah,
that there
there's
is.
a report. Mhm. I
Yeah,
saw
that's-
somebody write in the comments that there was a video of it. That I don't recall, but I do know there's a report.
They
I've
checked
never
the-
seen anything. Yeah, I've never seen any signs that they recorded it. They may have and just not wrote it down, but
I
there is a
don't-
report.
I don't think they did a walkthrough video in the blue trailer. Otherwise, I would have seen it. Remember
Yeah.
the detectives on November the 6th? I don't think they went inside the blue trailer. I'm just thinking on whether there's a exit video on November the 12th I don't think they went in the blue trailer, but they did write a report. They found nothing of evidentiary value.
It just had a bunch of shit stored in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff stored.
Alrighty. Next question.
Alligator 57 asks, wasn't Blazer burned later off property?
It was prior.
No. There
It was a year-
wasn't
is it-
Blazer of
it-
Stevens, right?
It was a
Like
it
a
was
year.
Barb's.
Or Barb's,
94?
yeah.
Was it 94?
It was a
As
year
in-
prior.
Azanda Road?
Was that?
I don't
what's
remember
that?
the location. I just know that Barb had a Blazer stolen, and it was burned. And I think they accused her of
Insurance.
whatever insurance fraud or something.
Yep.
As in that they had done it themselves, but I don't remember. But that was a year prior.
Doc, you
Correct.
said 94. I know you meant 2004.
Sorry, 2004. Correct. 04. We've got the documents. I can definitely check it. And I'm not sure whether it was off Xander Road, but it wasn't Stephen. They were trying to blame Stephen. He was
Yeah.
with Joe. Yeah. So
Crockett's saying Xander.
Xander. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. We've got the documents in our library.
Yeah, we do.
Alrighty. Next question.
From Anthony Hills, who had opportunities to plant a key post Stephen leaving, the state or family? Could have been either.
It could have been, but I don't think it was either. I think I lean far more towards somebody from the state than anybody in the family, personally.
I lean toward them dropping it that day on the 8th in the trailer,
So do I.
not somebody putting it in previous.
It points to law enforcement, unfortunately.
Yeah.
In my
I
opinion.
agree.
In my opinion.
I-
The whole finding of the key, we're not going to go over it again. Whole finding of the key is
Yeah.
very, very suspicious.
It
Very
is. Considering the 3 cops that testified and then Kratz turning around and not just asked the jury not to consider it, it's really questionable.
correct.
The coins
All
in
right.
the Air Force,
Yep.
I'll just say that.
Next question.
Monica Clatt asks, how did law enforcement get Cuss Road before the scent dog? And when did law enforcement first show up at Cuss Road? You think after Tom B. phone call on November 6th, is that how law enforcement learned about Cuss Road?
No. That was. You guys want me to explain it quickly?
Yeah.
So they divided up. They decided they were going on the 7th. They were going to search, and they had 5 or 6 teams. Search Team A began their search with permission in the Redont Quarry, walking a certain direction, which was towards Cuss Road. At some point, they crossed the property line, and it's not identified which searcher found the patch of disturbed earth, but they alerted Bushman. Bushman went and checked it out. He radios on his portable. Each search team was provided a portable radio. He radioed in and said, "Hey, we found something down here, some items of evidence. Need to send investigators down." Then he comes back, 10 seconds later and says, "And you need to bring a shovel," or something to that effect. So it was actually search team Bushman's team that found that patch. Yep, of disturbed earth on November 7th. November 7th, not the 6th.
Correct. Yep, November the 7th. Correct. And they got the scent dog later on in the afternoon. I think it was early afternoon. So basically, searchers found the disturbed earth patch first. Then we wrote up the search warrant, that basically came up with the story of, which is interesting, because in that search warrant, he mentions Loof and he mentions Brutus. So that must have mean that, what does that mean? That means that the dog had already done the hit or gone to Cuss Road, and Brutus did the hit at the disturbed earth. So when did we write all that up?
Exactly.
That it's sort of like a retrospective search warrant. Do you know what I mean? Because he said, oh, we had the cadaver dog, we had the scent dog. And he said what the importance of each of those were, right?
Yep.
So, wow.
Well, it tells me that there's
That
things
was
that
all
went that went unreported officially.
Yes.
That's what it tells me. But it went into that draft search warrant.
They later
Correct.
mentioned that they found bones there.
Yes. Yep, correct. And then that was actually said during
In a
Alan.
hearing, right? Evidentiary or?
there was a report written,
Yeah.
and the argument was that Tom Fassbender was complaining that he didn't have enough resources.
Yeah.
And in one of the reports, they had mentioned the finding of the cremains. Yep, at Cuss Road. But I've heard arguments, oh, no, that was all a mistake. So something's going on. Yep.
I agree. So hopefully that
Just made
answers
another
your question.
mistake. Darn it.
Yeah. The whole thing with Cuss Road began on the morning of November 7th with Search Team A, Bushman's
That's
team.
correct. That's correct. Bushman.
As far as we know.
Yep, as far as we know. Yep.
And as you know, there were extensive photographs taken of that site
There
by
was.
trooper in the aeroplane, and that's why we got those brilliant pictures of the flyover because of him.
And there were ground pictures taken that we can't get. They won't let us have them.
Yep.
Blocked, denied. All righty. Thank you, Ronica. Great question.
Excellent question.
Next question.
You Fraser again. What's the degree of difficulty for the state to lose? Well, I think Silkman covered that. All those departments, all those, the entire
Oh, it's huge.
state of Wisconsin. Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
huge.
That's not even. You mean how many state troopers are there are associated? Because they're all over the state as well. So they probably fall somewhat under that umbrella too, Doc.
Yes. This is humongous.
Yep.
And don't worry, we'll read it because Ferak and Zilna talk about it later on in the chapter. It's massive. To have a person twicely wrongly convicted, that's freaking unheard of.
I agree. Alrighty, good question, Hugh. Next question.
Sharon Windley asks, can't satellite be used to track where Teresa was if she left the Avery yard, or is it too late?
I've heard this discussion before. It really depends on whether there was a satellite at that location at that time and it took a picture.
Yep.
The chance of that probably close to zero, unfortunately. Yep.
I will tell you, in 2017, a group of us, it was actually quite a few of us that really wanted satellite photos to see if there was anything out there that could be, given or purchased. And don't ask me to remember which outfit this was, but there were satellite photos of somewhere around in that time frame. I can't remember the dates, but to purchase them was an enormous cost we couldn't afford. And I'm not talking about $100. I'm talking about into the thousands of dollars that they wanted. So that was just a closed off. And even then, we didn't know exactly when the satellite photos were taken.
Yep. Because if the satellite flyover is not in sync with that time frame, then you're going to miss it.
That's right.
Then you have to question the degree of resolution, whether there was enough resolving power to distinguish a RAV4 on the ground.
In 2005, it wasn't great. I mean, you can look at Google Earth because they've got satellite photos and compare it to, even 10 years later, it's pretty piss poor resolution.
But today it's scary.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
It's scary. Yep.
It
They
really
can.
is.
I think they've got the resolving power that they could distinguish a number plate from the sky. From the sky.
That's just what we know of.
Yeah.
Imagine the things that they, that haven't become public
Don't
yet.
tell us. No, these are all military, to do with military.
Yeah.
and security. Yep.
Absolutely. All right, next question.
From Danny Burfan, would a smaller local population help control the variables? He's talking about the partial DNA.
Yeah.
We are talking tens of thousands of locals, not millions from big cities.
Oh yeah, but it's the same issue. If your information that you put in is insufficient, no matter what you test, it's not going to help you, because we all share common alleles. All of us do. So the more information you can input into a database, the better.
Yeah.
And that's why you don't. A partial profile is it's a star. A partial profile can be used to exclude, but then to try and find someone who left that partial profile in a population, tricky, very tricky.
That's a different animal altogether.
Different, correct.
Yeah.
Possible.
Still a good question, and
Very
down
good
that I think it's down the right track, but I think they would. I don't know how much little partial that she had, but
yeah.
Yeah.
But she had enough to determine that it was a male.
Yeah, that is interesting.
That is very interesting.
All right, next question.
Hugh Fraser, Brenda Schuler, in my opinion, is a disciple of Kratz. So given that Kratz was shunned by the state when he went rogue with that video of Buting, does the plates pick of Brenda mean KK's back in the fold?
He's definitely back in the fold.
I know he posted
with Reid.
I know that he posted on X, Crash did, he wanted to do a sit-down interview with Brenda, Sean Reck, and Candace Owens, like a round-robin discussion.
I don't think my stomach could take that.
Well, I mean, he posted that, and I'm like, why the hell would you want Candace Owens there? She doesn't know shit. Nothing. Other than drawing in a lot of people to watch.
I'm sure he wants to discredit her.
So
show his
yeah.
stuff.
I sense I sense there's going to be a war. Mr. Kratz is not happy. Did you see my response to him, which he didn't answer?
Yeah.
There's a war brewing, and it doesn't involve foul play. For a change, I think there's going to be internal trouble. I don't think Kratz was happy with the way he was represented on convicting a murderer.
I agree.
He didn't get much airtime.
No.
Yeah, I have a feeling that they made him look bad deliberately, because when I asked him about the question about the way he criticized Fassbender and Wiegert, when he said that you guys just effed up my case, Kratz responded to me saying, that wasn't meant to be in the program, and I told Mr. Reck that, and I thought, oh yeah, okay, okay, yeah.
But I'm sure he signed a waiver.
Oh, absolutely. But if Sean had stuck with what he originally said that Cam was going to be, I think it would have had I'm going to say huge, but a much more positive outcome than it did.
I agree. I was really looking forward to them showing how Brendan and Stephen carried out this murder.
Yep.
And showing the forensic evidence outlining this is what happened. And they would have gone on the property and said, look, Teresa was here, this event occurred, that event occurred, and just convinced everybody to say, see, told you. They did none of that. It was a hate piece. It was all about hatred. And to make teams like us look like idiots, except that didn't occur because we were able to answer all their questions with conviction. And we never even talked about the freaking case. And then Brenda having the audacity to ask Linda about the controls,
DNA.
PCR controls, instead of asking me. I'm sorry, but all credibility just went down the S-bend as far as I'm concerned. She knew I knew about DNA. That's just unforgivable.
Well, I mean, we got, I think, just a very short amount of time talking about the Halbach case on air. but
Yep.
they didn't. She wouldn't let us talk about it, and it kept saying, "Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, we'll do that," and then that interview never occurred. It
No. She
really
just
bad.
just disappeared.
Yeah, it just it was really disingenuous, and it really bothered me because I thought that's what I thought Sean wanted a full story, but that's not at all what they wanted. Not at all.
Their aim was to make us look like a cult, bunch of idiots,
Yeah.
investigator bias, you name it. And I remember when Brenda asked me, because I'm on the episode and we're in the episode, whether Teresa Horbach is dead. And I
Yeah.
said molecular reason exactly why she's dead to the T. And then Candace turns around and says, see, some people think she's still alive. And I'm there, fuck me. I just explained to you, to your national or to the audience, exactly why Teresa Horbach is dead from a molecular standpoint. And Candace turns around and says, see, some people don't believe. I thought, oh my God, that was embarrassing.
Well, it was, again, it goes, it's really disingenuous of saying, well, we want the truth, but, and not do that and just not acknowledge, say, well, okay, all right. Because, go ahead.
Yeah, it wasn't a good look. And
no.
Then when poor Linda was asked about the PCR controls, and then Candace comes on and says, see, the truth is I don't care about controls. Why should we? And I'm there.
Well, that became another point of kind of contention because, hey, let's just face it, there was some really wild theories out there that, hey, you know what, people can say whatever they want. It doesn't mean I believe it.
Correct.
At all, or adopt it, or even consider it much more, but that doesn't take away their right to say it.
Correct.
So
they lump everybody into one.
They did.
One hive mind, they like to say. We've got a
painted
hive
with the
mind.
same brush.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right. Next, we've got looks like about three or four more. I think three more questions. All right, here we go.
Question right here. Very good question.
Okay, Veronica Clack asks, during Boresh account of Bobby driving the RAV4, shouldn't Bobby be at work? How is Bobby driving anything at Bobby work hours are from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.?
If he had seen Bobby Dassey, again, if he had seen Bobby Dassey, then Bobby was off work.
Yeah, Friday night, Saturday morning, he was off on Saturday. And Sunday. Or Friday, Saturday. One of the
Friday,
two.
Saturday.
Yeah.
So the argument that I've seen, well, maybe Boresh was pressured to say that he saw Bobby because that's the only day he had off. You know what I mean? So I've seen that argument as well.
Well, you have to also think about did Boresh or even Sawinski get anything out of this? And the answer is no.
No.
Nothing.
No. I think Sawinski said that if he ever got the reward money, he'd give it to the Horbach family.
That's right. He did say that.
Yeah, correct.
All right. Next question.
Anthony Hills, why do cops ask neighbors about paper delivery time?
They did. Actually did.
And not actually talk to the delivery guy?
They're exactly right, correct. The only person that didn't talk to
they?
I don't know. That's a really good question. Yep, correct.
Mm-hmm.
It is. That's a great question.
Although they did ask the neighbor.
Yes, the mail. And the mail. Yep.
Before Sawinski called, so they were asking about everybody possibly that could have been on that property.
That's correct.
Didn't interview Sawinski at all.
I didn't.
Nope.
All righty. Last question.
Once again, does the panel believe the RAV was positioned where it was under its own power based on the position of the hardware around the battery?
Yeah, I don't know. The only thing that we know are the observations of Sawinski. But it's interesting, right? Because if Tom Baresh saw the RAV4 driving, then obviously the battery was connected. And then Sawinski saw them pushing the RAV. You do not know whether these two guys disconnected the battery or just simply turned off the ignition as not to draw any attention to them. Right?
Stealth mode.
Stealth mode, because you don't want the lights on or you don't want to make any noise, right? Because remember, people on the salvage yard, they would have had heightened, the cops are around here, what are they trying to do? And remember, Chuck saw the lights, Stephen saw the lights. So any form of light, seeing any type of lights, which Stephen would have been able to see from his property, would have drawn attention. So they could have just simply turned off the ignition, decided to push it on. In other words, we do not know.
Got around the crusher, turned it back on, drove up there without lights. They could.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't know.
Someone disconnected the battery, correct.
Could it happen
Right.
after the car was parked?
Could have been, because remember,
Well,
someone took off the plates as well.
yep. So they could have
happened
pushed it up to.
before or
I mean,
after.
there was a lot of shit right in front of that RAV, so it would have had to been done prior to it getting pushed all the way in there, in my opinion, because you wouldn't have had room to lift the hood, prop arm, and all that stuff to get in there and disconnect the battery.
Good point.
Unless it was done prior, away from the property. So.
Yep. Good point.
Alrighty. And one last time, I'll pop this up. I think Tom has already gone, but thank you,
Thank you so
Thomas,
much.
for your subscription. We appreciate it.
Excellent.
We hope that your affidavit someday, somehow, will be helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. Either way. But again, guys, I want to thank everyone for coming and listening to the podcast. And thank you so much for all your kind comments and your feedback. We certainly do read all your comments. And we learn from what you say. We appreciate it very much. And we'll be back next week to hopefully complete this chapter from the book, from John Ferak's book. And Jack 61, what's installed for open mic?
Tomorrow open mic is going to be a couple of depositions. One of them, neither one like real long. They're both from retired detectives from Manitowoc. One's name is Fred Nicholson, and the other one is Larry Conrad. So they're not real long. And then after that, we have two left, which is Andrew Colburn. He's the last one on the 13th. His is really short, like 20 minutes. And then we have Jean Couchet, which is rather on the 26th. It's pretty long, but I think we can cram both into one episode without being too terribly long.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Yep.
And are there any other comments, guys, from the panel?
Hey, great
really,
presentation, Doc.
Yeah,
Thank
great
you
presentation.
For your hard work.
Absolutely.
Not at all. But if you ever,
opening, thought provoking.
Yeah, that's the whole idea, to ask further questions. If you ever go on X, I had a really excellent discussion about debunking the phone call between Stephen and his mother, Dolores, about the changing around the bedroom due to the rot on the floor. I did some deep diving, and they were talking about the second bedroom, not the master bedroom. And I showed all the photographs, and that's just incredible, because there were individuals who were saying, see, Stephen admitted to his mother that he had altered the bedroom. No, they're talking about the damage in the ceiling and the floor in the second bedroom, which you can see from the photos. So it was really interesting.
I did want to give a plug to New Scott. He released a video today with, I guess, one of Kratz's answers to one of the questions that, because he's doing this, I'm not exactly sure of the format that they agreed upon. He sent him several questions for Kratz to answer. And apparently he sorted through them. He began sorting through them, and he put up a video today. I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to try to catch it here in a bit. I can't do it right now, but head over to his channel and check it out. Comment or whatever. See what Mr. Kratz said.
Yep, awesome. I've got to check that out. Again, guys, thank you so much. If you enjoyed our show, our presentation today, please subscribe, put your DNA in the thumbs up button, and share our podcast. And guys, we'll see you all again tomorrow. Thank you so much.
And this has been Foul Play Production.